This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakelin.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking. And Dan Yarrington in the third chair.
I'm your Huckleberry.
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming at the speed of a mountain man scout riding hell-bent for leather on a half-winded old nag hopped up on Rotgut. Today's edition is brought to you by all of our fine friends over at Patreon, the men and women who help us keep the lights on, legends in their own way, including Mike Sweetman, Joe, Stephen Hajuko, Dean Gilbert, and Jochin Keo. I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today our panelists are Russ, I'll come with you, Wakelin, and the man of Myriad, the Tabletop Tycoon, the Senor of Game Salute, the Knob of Ship Naked, and the Dawn of Hit Point Distribution, Dan, is that a bear yonder? Yarrington! Let's begin. Issue number 1. Of the many challenges facing business owners in 2015, a particularly difficult year for retailers specifically, one of the more painful was reaching online customers in the face of juggernauts and tyrants that have dominated the space for nearly a decade. How much time, effort, and capital should be invested in reaching these elusive customers? In 2015, a particularly insidious further danger reared its head. Question. In late 2014, it was discovered that a large percentage of web traffic to retailers was the result of sophisticated robot programs at a cost of over $6 billion. What percentage of web traffic was discovered to have originated with robots? Rick 920 Russ.
67%.
Dwarf Spider Dan.
33%.
Oh, well, according to Rob Marsh, owner and CEO of Logo Maker, nearly 25% of all web traffic to retail sites originated from robots. They're coming for your sales! Issue number 2. According to many proponents of the pay-to-play model for gaming stores, where the store provides a superior gaming experience, terrain, safety, environment, and more for a specific cost of admission, the model is proven by the continued success of such businesses as bowling alleys, where a person shows up, pays a fee, and can play on a professional lane, renting shoes, ball, etc. as needed for as long as they want. Question. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, there were nearly 5,500 bowling alleys in America in 1998. In 2012, the last year for which comprehensive data is available, how many bowling alleys were in operation? Mark Roth Russ.
933.
Don Johnson Dan.
1,220.
Slightly more than 4,000 for a net loss over a 14-year period of nearly 1,500 businesses. An interesting model for success. Issue number, which you're wrong on so many levels. Issue number 3. A true hero of the American frontier, James Butler Wild Bill Hickok was born May 27, 1837 in Troy Grove, Illinois. The son of William Alonzo and Polly Butler Hickok, he was by all accounts a master marksman from an early age. Hickok moved west in 1855 to farm and joined General James Lane's Free State anti-slavery forces in Kansas. He was later elected constable of Monticello Township in Johnson County, Kansas. Accounts of his life read as a who's who of the American frontier with a dizzying list of accomplishments that seems impossible for one man to have performed. Question. In 1860, Wild Bill's exploits were put on hold as he was bedridden for 4 months. What set the great gunman on his heels? Rainbow Crow Russ.
Pneumonia.
Davy Crockett Dan.
Gout.
He was injured fighting a bear. According to Hickok's own account, he found his road blocked by a cinnamon bear and its 2 cubs. He approached the bear and fired a shot into its head, but the bullet ricocheted from its skull, infuriating it, and a fight ensued. Issue number 4. Following Reconstruction and the departure of Union troops from the South, a new age of repression and exploitation of the African-American population began. Like many disenfranchised people of the age, they looked to the West for release and new opportunities free of the difficulties that had plagued their past. In the 1870s, thousands abandoned their homes in the South in an attempt to find their own promised land on the frontier and the far West. Question. What were these brave men and women, nearly all of them freed slaves looking to build a better life for themselves and their families, called by both themselves and the hopeful folks that stayed behind? George Ruxton Russ.
Ramblin' Rovers.
Andrew Drips Dan.
Hopeful homesteaders.
Oh, you go. No. And the alliteration doesn't gain you any bonus points. The first general migration of former slaves after the Civil War, the movement was known as the Exodusters. After the Exodus of the Bible, and, well, I guess it was dusty. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by Lone Wolf Development. Take your game to the next level.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
And by Audible. Try the service, get a free book, and support the show. All by visiting audibletrial.com/D6G.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, and welcome to episode welcome to episode 182 of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakeland.
I'm Craig Gallant.
And I'm Dan Yarrington.
Hey,
Also
Dan.
known as the Tabletop Tycoon.
Tycoon, bless you.
If Russ is typing out the notes.
Look, the spelling is.
I reject your spelling and substitute it with my own.
It's an arbitrary attempt.
I get
to
it.
keep
The
you down.
H made it look more exotic.
Right. So, Dan, welcome back to the show. It seems like it's been a coon's age. Sorry,
It has. We're gonna have to go read Rascal again if we want to learn
That's
the
right.
Coons.
So today we're gonna catch up with Dan a little bit and get his thoughts on what he's been up to, what Myriad Games and Game Salute and all the other various ventures that Dan's been doing, and what his thoughts on the industry are. But then also we're going to dive into and give a good review here of the new game Legends of the American Frontier. Right? Yeah. So talk about that in a bit. So, but first though, we do have some little shopkeeping here. And first, we just recently caught up with Dan in Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
And we're chatting away there. And Dan, do you remember what we discussed in Dunkin' Donuts?
I believe we discussed on that fateful night the options for pay-to-play in local game stores.
That's right.
We did.
Kind of talked about why that makes sense or why it doesn't make sense, why some people think it's worth doing, why other people think maybe it's not, and just had a nice little fun discussion about that. So that was interesting. And Craig, what should people do if they want to listen to the Lost Chapters?
Well, why wouldn't they, Russ? Really? I mean, they're little gems in the rough. And we cast them around. And the best way to listen to them is to become a Patreon supporter of the show. And for the low donation of $2 an episode, they get access to the entire catalog of Lost Chapters to listen to as they will. With the new Patreon app, it's even better.
Indeed. You can listen to all the shows right there on your phone. Makes it very, very simple. So check that out if you'd like. And really, that's the big stuff going on now. So,
well, actually, Russ, that's not quite it.
Oh, it isn't?
Nope. Some people have felt that we misstated a couple things going on this summer. And so to set the record straight, we just want to make sure everybody knows that TempleCon, mentioned, I think I was being very generic and cavalier about its dates, but it is August 25th through the 28th.
Yes, the heart of con season, right there.
The heart of con season, right in the middle, right, like a couple weeks or two I'm going to be vague again. 2 or 3 weeks after Gen Con.
Yes.
And I believe a week or two before Dragon Con.
Yes.
And it's going to be at the Crown Plaza in Rhode Island as usual.
Yeah.
It's not and the funny thing was apparently some people felt we got the dates wrong, and you would have to assume other people felt that we said that it wasn't going on at all and had been replaced with Captain Con, because clearly you can't replace it, and also you can't say it got replaced and get the dates wrong. So I was a little confused by that, but yes, TempleCon did not get replaced by Captain Con, only insofar as their exact same date and the place. So if you went to TempleCon last year and you went to go there again this year in the exact same time and place, you would find Captain Con there. But it didn't replace it. They just switched places, and TempleCon is now in the summer, August 25th through the 28th. At the Crown Plaza, and their website doesn't have the town. Yes. So there you go.
I think the simplest way to think about it is if you're looking to go to a convention in Rhode Island in February, the convention choice you have is Captain Con. If you're looking to go to a convention in Rhode Island in August, the choice is TempleCon.
Exactly. You know what we should do? We should at some point have someone at TempleCon just come in and tell
that would be awesome.
Tell the story the way it is.
We will do that. Let's reach out
there
to
we
TempleCon
go.
folks and see if we can get them on the show. That would just clear the whole thing up.
All right, now we're ready.
Okay,
ready,
good.
Go.
So what's the time now for, Craig?
Now it's time for Achievements in Gaming.
It is. So, Craig, Achievements is always brought to us by our fine friends over at Patreon.
Yes, indeed.
The amazing legends of the Patreon frontier.
Of the Patreon frontier, of the cyber frontier.
Keeping the lights on.
Dan, write that down. There's another one for your series.
Oh, yeah, Legends of the Cyber Frontier, Dan.
I'll call Richard and let him know.
Yeah, get on that. All right, so time now for what we've been playing lately. Dan, what have you been playing lately?
Well, obviously, I played Legends of the American Frontier with you guys, which had been probably a year and a half since I played, and that was a lot of fun. I had forgotten, actually, sort of how much that game is exactly the type of game that I like to play, because I really like games with a narrative to them, and it has a good sort of progression, and it lets me go aggro, which is something I like to do a lot, which is sort of just push your luck
Go
and
aggro.
Sometimes fail. I was actually really lucky in that game. I think I was the only one that didn't end up with anything negative.
Yeah. Bragging does not become you, Dan.
That's true.
I was just stating the facts. I wasn't really bragging. So.
I see.
Braggadocio, I think, is something that we use here on the American frontier. I will also brag about the many games that I play with my young children, notably the Sneaky Snacky Squirrel game.
The Sneaky Snack. Do you call that the Triple S game?
Yeah, that one is not really a game, I would argue, but it has a cool little tweezery thing that you pick up acorns with and you put it onto things. And our 2-year-old likes it, and it has a weird size box.
Okay.
We also played Chef Alfredo from Queen Games, and
is that a
one
game, or is that
Logan
also
actually
a
really
dexterity
likes.
thing? Is that a game?
Yeah, no, that's a real game.
Okay.
Yeah, you have these cool wooden pots, and you put all the ingredients in them. And so it's just, I forget, it's 4 ingredients like garlic, etc. They're the little tokens. And then the game is effectively just a memory game because you're swapping things around. So you have to remember that, like, this is the pot for carrots, this is the pot for garlic, etc. And so you swap them, you like peek at it so you know what it is. You swap it, and then other people have to call whether you're bluffing or not, like whether you were right. So they can either remember that, oh, no, that was the carrots one, or they can just, guess and say no. And it's a good sort of little quick game. But yeah, nice presentation on that one. And then we played Favor of the Pharaoh, which is from the folks at Bezier Games, from Tom Lehman, and enjoyed that one. I played that at Millie's the other day, and had a good time with that. It's a dice building game, I guess they would call it. Feels more just like a dice rolling game where you get your pool of dice and then you win. But
hey, there's a lot to be said for rolling dice.
Right.
It's true. But it was very good. I think that one was one that came down to like a stand-up die roll sort of moment.
That's cool.
I was playing with, I think Jeremy was teaching us, and then I was playing with Jeremy and Megan and Brian. And I think it came down to like I had to beat Brian or something, and I beat him by 1 die.
Oh, wow.
So that was a good one. And then I've been playing a lot of Skylanders Superchargers, which is the newest Skylanders, which Logan has a large collection of. And that one has vehicles, and we have the Wii U version, so we have the Donkey Kong version. So it's slightly more, I'm not going to say enjoyable, but tolerable than the traditional Skylanders, which if you've never played it, is basically just a really crappy version of Gauntlet.
Yeah.
But it has really cool toys, and the sculpts are amazing. So that one has been our latest thing. And I haven't quite played yet, but I'm looking forward to playing Lego Dimensions, which is actually one sort of like Skylanders or those types of games.
Yeah.
But you can actually build stuff as you go. And we got the Doctor Who pack, which I'm excited about, so that we can play in the Doctor Who level. And we have the little TARDIS. And I haven't quite dug into like how it works, but it seems like it changes on the screen as you rebuild it.
Oh, that sounds cool. We have to tell me how that is once you get a chance to play with it a little bit.
Yep.
Cool. Craig, what about you, sir?
Oh, I've had yet another bumper crop of games. First, I forgot to mention this in the last episode, and this speaks mainly to the fact that it was apparently very difficult to find during the holiday season. But I played several games at several different venues of Pie Face.
Oh.
Pie Face would be the slightly more childish and safe for home version of Russian roulette. For those of you not familiar with it, it's a very simple game and comes with a very cheap spinner, and you spin it, and it says, I think it's like 1 through 4, or might be 5, and it comes with this thing like it's a face, and you stick your face through the hole, and there's an armature that's spring loaded. And you put like a little mini pie with whipped cream on the hand that's on the spring-loaded armature. And whatever you spin, whatever the number is, there's little cranks. You have to put your head through the little hole, and then you crank these little handles the number of times, and it's a random number of times that's going to set it off and throw the pie in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I saw that at Essen. It made a huge mess.
Yeah, it did make a huge
Now, how
mess.
many plays of this do you have?
I have 2 tournaments, really, if you want to get technical.
Okay.
And because it's pure luck. There's absolutely no skill whatsoever. And sadly, my luck has never been very good.
Is it more a test of fortitude? Like you're going to sit there?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's totally like you're like flinching and you're just waiting. I mean, there's video all over Facebook of people playing this game.
Nonsense. Yes.
It's silly. It was fun. That was fun.
Okay.
So finally, probably because I painted up a ship for him, Russ came in on our low jog squadron X-Wing. So Russ finally got a chance to play X-Wing co-op.
It was awesome. Oh, I loved it. It was
blast.
Great. Oh, it was so much fun. Yeah, I really liked it.
It's so fun. Yeah. So, and Russ actually helped us with the mission that we were on. We succeeded in the mission. It was a very cool mission.
Notice how
it
he
was
said
very
that like
tactical.
Russ actually did help us. It was like, it was amazing, but it happened.
And so we're farther along on the campaign track to the point where with a decent pull, the next time we can get together, we could get a victory point.
Nice.
And with that little group of guys, if we can get 1 victory point before we move on to the next game, I'm going to be happy.
That'd be impressive.
Then let's see. I played in my never-ending attempt to evangelize my favorite games. I played Beyond the Gates of Antares 500-point Concord on Concord game with Dave.
Yes, how did that
last
go?
week? He liked it. He liked it a lot. He was looking at the models and he was looking at the book after the fact. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get him in on it, but he had a really good time. Mm-hmm. And our Imperial Assault group has reconvened.
Nice.
Ian his comic stylings are going furious and fiery, so he doesn't have his Tuesdays free much anymore outside of all the D&D stuff that he does. And so Andy jumped in, so it's Dave, Andy, Matt, and Christian and I, and we started our first game in the Twin Shadows mini campaign.
Nice. How's it going?
It's awesome. In the first mission, you end up in a battle between Han Solo and Boba Fett.
Oh, nice. That's very cool.
So you need the models, really,
right.
and you need them painted up because that just adds so much more to it. And just like in the primary campaign in the initial box set, almost every mission did that. It came down to 2 dice rolls. Mm-hmm. We needed to make 1 of 2 dice rolls, and we would have won, and we couldn't quite pull it out. But it was a blast. It's such a great game, so much fun, especially with the right group of guys. And so I'm excited to have that going again. Reese over the weekend decided he wanted to have a day of games, and who am I to complain about that?
No, you can't.
So I can a little bit. We played Guess Who.
All right.
We played Trouble.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't even know where he found it because it got put on the big game pile. I didn't know he could even see it. But he dragged out Squirrel or Die.
Oh, nice.
And we played the Squirrel or Die, the matching version. Because, as we said, you can play it as just a matching game. And it was hilarious going through looking for all just the squirrel food, which is what you can use for the matching game. And he's like, Daddy, why is there dynamite and a dead squirrel face? Never mind. Why is there a trap? Never mind. Why is there poison? Never mind. So that was funny. And we ended up with a game of D&D Attack Wing, which we haven't played in a while, and he loves. And this time I beat him, and I felt a little bad. Except then I had to remember that he beat me like 3 times.
That's right. Show him you got to teach him the importance of being a graceful loser.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Beat them into submission.
Sportsmanship.
Or you could do the Russ route and try to beat them into submission,
and
cheat to try to teach the lesson and still lose.
And it still fails.
And still lose. Yeah.
Exactly.
So on the holiday, I went over Joe's house. It's great. His son and my son really get along, so that gives us a lot more opportunities to hang out and play games. And normally when we all get together, we're either going to play X-Wing because that's what I got them excited in now, or board games and dice games and just fast stuff. So I threw a bunch of minis games into my car, and we ended up playing Frost. He chose fantasy. He wanted to play some fantasy games. So we played Frostgrave. We had a blast. I forgot how lethal that game is and how quickly guys die.
That game. Yeah, oh yeah.
It's such a fun game. And it was really nice to get. I brought everything with me. So we played on the really nice terrain with the big giant medieval ship and all the snow. So that was awesome. And then we played Guild Ball because I thought he would like Guild Ball because, your brother and him loved Blood Bowl so much.
Yeah, right.
And he loved it. It was the exact same matchup with pretty much the exact same outcome as my game with you, my last game with you. So he took the Masons. I don't know if maybe, ideally, anybody out there who's trying to demo Guild Ball to get your friends into it, you should use the Morticians and have the person you're demoing for use the Masons. Apparently that's a good lineup. So he crushed me even worse than you did. I did nothing against him and he crushed me. But he loved it to the point where I think I talked him into buying a couple teams.
There you go.
And I'll paint them up and then we can all play like when X-Wing fades away.
Right. Guild Ball.
And then Legends of the American Frontier. We'll talk more about that later. That was a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun with Michael the Irishman, not to be confused with the Englishman Russ.
Right.
And then went over to Gordon's and played another 1,000-point game of Gates of Antares with Russ. And I don't know, how'd that go, Russ? I don't remember much of that game.
My first victory in Beyond the Gates of Antares versus Craig with my Gar. It was very exciting.
Yeah, I don't remember it at all.
It was a great game, so really enjoying it. Still loving Antares.
It was brutal. It was great. It was one of those games where you try to do everything once things start going against you, and there was nothing I could. Russ just had everything where he needed it to be.
It worked out, but you had that one really cool artillery piece that was throwing down all kinds of cool.
I do. I was finally able to leverage the X launcher to cool. my satisfaction. So those are the games I've been playing. Russ, what about yourself?
Well, not a lot, not as much as you for sure, but. As you mentioned, played some Legends of the American Frontier with Dan and Craig, so looking forward to talking more about that. Played Beyond the Gates of Antares with Craig. We already talked about that. A friend of ours had a big birthday this weekend, and so her husband's planned a surprise party for her.
Who's that?
It was the Carlsons, Joel and Jamie.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Nicole and I went out to that, and we had a great time. It was fun to hang out and meet a lot of their friends we didn't know well. It's really nice. And we played a giant game of Cards Against Humanity.
I don't get it.
And this is my first time playing the game. So
really?
I know of it, but I never played it before.
So your brother thought you had. That's weird.
So Nicole and I played, and it was about, I don't know, 10 people playing or so. And one of the guys there, Ken, he has the big black box there, the giant Cards Against Humanity box. So he had a bajillion cards. And I had to say it was pretty funny. There were some good moments. I mean, a large party setting, and when you're not actually playing to win, I mean, you
can't play to win.
But you're not really playing to win. It's more of a social, party game than anything else. And it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny.
I don't get it.
It's kind
of super fight is way. I don't like. There's no creativity really, other than how you're putting the cards together.
Well,
so it's.
Did you play?
In my experience, it's a bunch of people who are reading what they think is funny. They're just reading it.
No. But have you played? Have you? So I think the key to this is I found the single word answers very dull.
Mm-hmm.
I found the multi-word sentences great.
Yeah.
So I think the key to this, Russ, is alcohol.
Yeah, I think the key to this for Russ is a margarita.
Although
That's
I had none. I honestly had none. But they so what happens is when it's 3 words, you can 3 blanks or 2 blanks, you can put some pretty interesting things together, especially when people's names are in the deck.
Yeah.
then it becomes kind of funny. So I don't know. I thought it was pretty funny. I thought it was pretty funny.
Okay. I mean, obviously, it's very popular.
It's clearly toilet humor, so it's really funny in the way South Park is
but
funny.
even that,
It's funny like South Park's funny,
Yeah,
right?
that's
play
I
with
disagree.
families
No,
and
not
big
even
groups.
close. South
Yeah,
Park
yeah,
is
yeah.
so much funnier. But anyway,
I'm saying it's on that same level of
Yeah,
it can,
that kind of humor.
when South Park gets potty humor, yes, it's
Yes, that's where it is. It's right
Yeah.
there in the potty humor tank. But
It's
I thought it was pretty funny.
okay.
And then
Well,
last
you're
but not-
entitled to your opinion.
I mean, I'd play it at a party. I would not play it 4-player at a game night and like, let's play some cards against you.
Let's get some
That's
cards
not
against you.
really, yeah. That's not
Go
really
with
how
the
it's
cards.
Seriously,
designed.
guys, everybody has to be honest in when they choose winners.
Right. So yeah, and it does help when you know the people too, because you play to their what you think they pick.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh.
I've heard it all, and I hear it, and I
Yeah,
get it, and
yeah,
I just didn't
All
enjoy
right.
it.
Speaking of games that are fun when you're drinking, have you guys played Loop and Chewy?
I have heard of it, yes, but I've not played it myself. Have you played
Oh,
it?
it's awesome. We have the original Loop and Louie, and Loop and Chewy is the Star Wars version of it.
Right, it's got Chewie in the Falcon, so
Yeah, so I have a copy of that if you guys want to play sometime. It takes literally like 3 minutes to play.
there we go. See,
Really?
and of course I played X-Wing with the Low Jaw crew. That was a blast.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the co-op. You know, it was my first time playing the co-op game, and I know we talked about it on the show quite a bit, and it all sounded good, and I was like, yeah, whatever. But it won't be as fun as battling someone. The co-op campaign is so much fun. It's just the way to play X-Wing now, period.
Yeah.
So, all right. So what about modeling? So, Dan, what have you been doing? Do you do any modeling, painting anything, anything like that?
Well, I've been modeling my stylish Stetson every day.
That
but
is true. Dan,
That guy is rocking a Stetson wherever he goes,
If you
which in
haven't-
New Hampshire takes some guts.
if you haven't seen Dan in a while, he does rock a bowler tie and a cowboy hat, a Stetson, white. White because, of course, he's a good guy, right?
He is a good. He's a white hat.
It's
Right,
kind
a
of
white
tan. I don't know.
I guess, yeah, it's not black, though. So you're,
No, definitely not black.
sending a
I
message.
did when I went to church the other day, though. There was a guy at the door that was like greeting people, and we both did this sort of like he was wearing a black Stetson, and we both did this like nod to each other thing because we so rarely run
It's like
into each other.
Jeeps.
yeah, it's like the Jeep wave,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Oh, Craig, what about you? I know you're stuff.
Well, I finished all my Gates of Antari's first wave stuff, so I've got a lot of Gates of Antari's all painted up.
Yep.
And I don't even know how I would use half of it, but I bought at least one of everything, and so
Right.
that's good. And now
Now
there's
you
a whole
got
bunch
wave
of new
two.
stuff coming out in
Wave
the next
2.
week or two.
Yeah, right.
And because of the Imperial Assault, getting all excited with Imperial Assault, I went and I had all this stuff from Gen Con, all the second wave Imperial Assault stuff. So I painted all that. So 4 heavy stormtroopers, the stormtrooper officer whose name escapes me. You don't have to email me it because I could easily look upstairs and see it. So please don't take the time. 4 sand people, Boba Fett, who's awesome, R2-D2 and C-3PO, and the 2 rebel characters. So I got and I was reminded once again how fast those things paint up.
Oh, they do go again nicely.
Yeah, they paint up fast. They look cool. It's Star Wars. What's not to like about that?
Right.
And I feel like I'm not as demanding of myself because I'm kind of like it's a board game.
Right.
But yeah, so that's me. What about you, Russ? What have you been doing? You got a lot of stuff to paint before.
I know. I'm working like crazy
Captain
to get ready
Con.
for the Captain Con thing here. I've got my second unit of suits is basically done. And I've got all my outcasts are primed and based. And I'm starting to play around with painting colors. But yeah, I've got a lot of work to do between now and the first weekend in February. So, or I guess the second
Now, have we
February,
even mentioned anywhere that we're doing this?
Yes, last episode.
Okay.
And you can mention
last
it again here,
episode.
but
we didn't mention it this episode. But hey, we're mentioning it.
But
now.
yeah, so yeah, we'll be
Come find us at Captain Con and play
Yeah.
Gates of Antares with us, please.
Yes, please do.
Because we're gonna feel really silly. Actually, no, we'll just have another cool game all to
Right,
ourselves.
Saturday, 10 o'clock. Come on down. It's going to be fun. And you just walk up to the table. We are going to hook you up with a squad. We got everything you need to play. You can check out Craig's awesome terrain. You can check out all of our units. You can learn how to play. There'll be crazy prizes. It's all good. Come on down.
Yep.
All right. What about other stuff? Shows, books? Dan, what have you been doing on the TV front?
Well, we watch a lot of stuff, pretty much everything streaming these days, so I'm not exactly watching current TV, but The Flash, we've finally started watching season 1
What do you
on
think?
Netflix. I don't know if you guys have all watched that.
Yeah, we're already in.
Russ
I'm in-
does.
Yeah, I'm in season, whatever it is, 2 or 3 or whatever we're on now.
2 or 3, whatever's
What
current.
are you thinking? What do you think?
So, yeah, we're really enjoying that one. I definitely like it much. We had tried to watch Arrow before, and The Flash is much more my proclivities, I suppose. It's much more silly and light. Arrow is a little too moody and angsty, I think.
Yep.
But I've still watched like 3 seasons of that. So I'm watching The Flash now. Last Man Standing. You guys watch that show?
I love that show. I like Tim Allen, though, so I'm kind of a sucker for Tim Allen, but I love Last Man Standing.
Yeah, so I'm current on that one. So
Yep.
I'm watching the current episodes as they come on Hulu. Big Bang Theory we just got, which I refuse to pay for CBS All Access, so I
Right,
just
right.
get it on iTunes.
Hey,
But,
have you
yep.
noticed the crossover between Big Bang Theory and Flash?
What do you mean?
Well, in Big Bang Theory, Sheldon often
He
wears
loves
a
the
Flash
Flash.
t-shirt. Well, in The Flash, the one scientist guy who names all the villains, he often wears Big Bang Theory shirts. He'll have rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, or he'll have Bazinga or something on. Keep an
There
eye
you
on
go.
it. Yep.
Yeah, so that one, we still enjoy it. I mean, a lot of people are like, it's too mainstream, but I love that show.
Yeah, I like it too. It's good.
Doctor Who Series 9, Doctor Who's one of my favorite shows,
Yes.
and we sort of ran into this the Christmas special. Like, there's always a Christmas special every year. And for some reason this year, I started thinking, I can't wait for the Christmas special because then the next series will start
No.
and I can watch it. So then we watched the Christmas special. I'm like, this doesn't really make sense. I'm missing something.
You missed the whole season?
And then I realized, oh my God, there's an entire series available. So it was like a Netflix
It was
drop
like Christmas is Christmas.
for Doctor Who. Yeah.
Right.
And I was like, we have to watch the entire thing. So we've now, since Christmas, have watched the entire.
Now, what did you
series.
think of this season?
I thought it was miles better than.
Yes, I agree. They really have nailed the current Doctor now.
Yeah,
I love that he plays
he's
the
really
guitar
come
and
into. He's in my number 2 slot right now.
He's doing great. Yeah.
He's vying with Tom Baker for my number 2 slot. David Tennant is my number 1.
Yeah, Baker's still my number 1, but then it's Tennant, and then it's our current guy, Capaldi. Yeah, but I like Capaldi. Capaldi, if they keep going with what they're doing with him, he's a contender for number 2 or number 1. He's doing great.
Yeah, I think he really came into his own this season. And spoilers, but I can't thank enough that Clara is finally done with her stint.
Yeah, she overstayed her welcome a little bit.
Yeah, 4 seasons, that's
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they'll have somebody. And I don't think, at least I haven't looked around on the internet, I don't think they've spoiled who the next companion is going to be.
They have not. Yeah.
But the Christmas special was actually very good, too.
Yep.
Sarah turned me on to iZombie, so we started watching the first series of that on Netflix. We probably watched 5-6 episodes.
Yep.
It's okay. Good procedural. It's light. It's not my favorite show, but it's growing on me. I like the guy that played Adam in Heroes, the guy who's the bad guy in that.
Yeah.
I don't know the actor's name.
I don't either, but yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he's pretty good. The Prophet, you guys watch this? It's on CNBC.
No.
I have not. Nope.
You can watch it on Apple TV or it's on iTunes, but it's sort of a makeover show for businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So Marcus Lemonis is the CEO of Camping World, and he's multi-millionaire, and he basically comes in and he says, "I save failing businesses." So he comes in and he says, "Your people suck, your process sucks." He has all these different things, and then he'll go through this he'll basically make an offer to buy into the business. And then he'll go through the whole process of fixing. It's all people, process, and product. That's his 3 things. So I definitely recommend it if you like reality shows or if you just like business type stuff. It's very interesting thinking about how looking at the lessons that people learn and how messy some of these businesses are.
You know who would love that? Rafe.
He would love that.
Yeah.
That's
it
right
would be
up his alley.
And you can get the first 6 episodes. First season's only 6 episodes. It was on iTunes. I think they're in season 4 now, but I think it's like $10 or something. So definitely worth checking out. I highly recommend it. We watch all that live now as it comes on CNBC.
Wow.
And then presently I'm reading We Are Market Basket, which is
That must be the Market Basket story.
biography, I guess,
Yeah.
of the sort of the family behind Market Basket and that whole thing that went down in 2013 at this point, 2014.
Yeah.
Seems like it was pretty recent, but it's interesting so far. I'm like a couple chapters in. So that one is interesting. I just finished Kindness Goes Unpunished, which is in the Longmire series from Craig Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys watched the Longmire TV show?
I have not. Is it good?
No, I've heard it's great.
Have you guys watched Justified?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you like Justified?
Yes.
Love it.
Okay, you'll love Longmire. And you
That's
can
what I've
watch
been told.
Yeah.
all 4 seasons on Netflix. The
Yeah.
first 3 seasons were on whatever network, AMC. No, it wasn't AMC. Some weird channel. And then Netflix picked it up and basically paid for the 4th season, and they have another one. So definitely recommend that. It's all streaming on Netflix now. And that, so I'm reading through the books as well, it's a series of Western murder mysteries starring Sheriff Longmire. So definitely recommend that. So I finished the last one. And then The Aeronaut's Windlass, which is the new series, the Cinder Spire series by Jim
both
Butcher.
Craig and I have read that. What did you think, Dan? What did you think?
I have not read it yet. No,
just starting. Okay.
That's next up. So I just finished Kindness and Punished.
Yep.
I'm currently reading We Are Moniker Basket, and then I'm going to do The Aeronaut's Windlass. And when I met Jim Butcher I think it was last year at Gen Con, and just had him sign a book. And I said, like, oh, well, I'm finished with Dresden Files. Like, I'm all caught up. But I still have Furies of Calderon?
Yeah. Caldera, the Codex Alera.
Codex Alera, that's right. Yeah. And so I read the first one of that, and I really, really liked the first one. This was after I read Dresden Files. So I'm going back to his older one, reading that, and I'm like, but I don't know, Jim. I don't know if I really want to read all of your books, because then I'll be out of Jim Butcher to read. And so then he's like, and I said, I don't think you're ready as fast as I can read. He said, well, you're just going to have to read faster. And so then, of course, he has this whole new series. So Steampunk looks good. I'll be looking forward to it. So you said you read it, Russ?
We both did.
I really enjoyed it. I believe Craig did too.
I didn't. I would say it's head and shoulders above Codex Alera.
Yeah.
Okay. Above Dresden Files or no?
No. At Dresden Files, I can't
different.
even really be an objective judge now. I just love it, and it like kind of looms large in my mind as far as.
Did you watch the TV series, the short-lived TV series?
I did, and it wasn't the same thing, but I enjoyed it for its own sake.
Yeah. So I really like that. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to love it. So I've got that. Shelf.
I bet you will.
Yeah. In fact, Dresden now is the police chief on Arrow.
Yes, he is.
That's right. Yes, he is. I love that guy. What is his name?
He's
Paul
actually really
Blackthorne.
good. Yeah.
I believe that is true.
Yep. Okay, so what have you been reading and listening to and watching, Greg?
Let's see. A listener, Mark Gillino, I think is how you'd pronounce that. I don't know. Mark's been emailing me back and forth for a little while now. He and his friend Joe King just published. It's a very intriguing way that they're doing it. They didn't write a single book. They wrote 4 small novellas that are about 50 pages each, and you can get them in ebook form or the physical books. The artwork on the cover is absolutely stunning. And they asked me if I'd read it, and so they sent it to me, and I read it. And like I said, 50 to 60 pages each mainly, and it's a really cool idea. Each one is a separate story, but they're not going out of their way to point this out to you. You kind of have to figure it out on your own. That the main characters in each story all knew each other when they were children, and they were all orphans at this orphanage, and now they're all adults. But there's just very, very, very vague glimpses of something happening to them when they were in this orphanage as children. It's fantasy. It reminds me a tiny little bit of Abercrombie. There's no foul language or like anything like that. It's just more of kind of that sort of a gritty, realistic, high fantasy kind of thing. I don't even know if that all makes sense, but really cool stories. I really enjoyed it and the way it tied everything in together. Next up on my bookshelf is a book that Adam, a local friend and listener, brought in and showed me. It's called S by J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorst.
Yeah, right.
And I'm super excited. I'm holding it right now. And I'm super excited to start it. If you get it, it comes in a sealed slip cover so that it looks almost like it's a collector's edition, and you have to break the seal to get to the book. Inside this cover that says S, which is what it's sold as, it's like an old linen covered library book called The Ship of Theseus by V.M. Straka. And when you open that, it's this old book. So you're reading this book with its story, and written in the margins in different color ink, in different handwriting, are these messages of 2 people who are kind of like sharing the book in the library, and they leave it in the common room. And so they'll read it, and then they'll write notes to each other. So you're learning their stories through their notes as you're reading the book. And they're also commenting on the book that you're reading. And there's some great mystery involving the author. And as you read it, actual physical things fall out of the book. Clues as to what's going on with the two people who are reading it and the mystery of the author and who the author really is. And then something goes horribly wrong with one of the people. I mean, if you flip through, it's like postcards from Brazil. There's newspaper articles. There's old like documentation that looks like it's photocopied. There's old pieces of newspaper article. And in the back, there's some kind of strange navigational aid. It just looks awesome. And I know 3 people who are in the process of reading it right now. Apparently, it's such an experience to read it because you're like putting it all together and you're reading it. It's an experience rather than just reading it. It takes forever to go through because as you're reading it, you're trying to process the margin notes and what's going on with the margin note characters, and you're getting all these clues falling out of the book. So I'm really, really, really excited about that.
It looks fantastic. I'm looking forward to your thoughts on it.
I can't wait. And I didn't even mention Mark and Joe's book. The 4 books are called the Echoes of the Ascended. Is the series of books, and the titles are, I had them, A Reaper of Stone, Rend the Dark, Best Left in the Shadows, and Faith and Moonlight are the ones that I currently have, and I highly recommend those too. So really looking forward to reading S by J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorst next. Just finished listening to Nemesis Games by James S.A. Corey, the latest book in the Expanse series. And I have got to say, it's one of my favorites in the entire series.
Really? Okay.
Book
Good.
4 really kind of stumbled for me. It sort of took everything out of the solar system. It lost its focus, in my opinion. I'm sure you learned information that's going to be important later on, but it felt like it wasn't advancing any of the major plot lines of the characters or anything except for one major one that, could have been in a 20-minute short story. But it didn't really grip me. But Nemesis Games is phenomenal, total game changer. Set a whole new story arc up for all the major characters and focuses on all 4 of the major characters, the crew of the Rocinante. So you get to really, really know all these characters. So I absolutely loved it. And watching the series on TV, I'm starting to feel, Russ, a little bit of what you're feeling, where there's a lot of characters. And I think they're starting, like, in playing into that, they're creating characters that didn't exist at all now. Right. And they're like showing scenes of characters that not only don't they exist, but they might have been like a 2-sentence throwaway line in the book, like, oh, and somebody threw some rocks at a Martian ship. But in the TV show, they're showing you like a 15-minute scene setting it up as if the characters are going to be important. And so I don't know. I'm getting very nervous. They've got a great story on their hands, amazing special effects. And I think that the actors some of them are phenomenal, and all of them are strong, and I think getting stronger every episode. I hope they don't screw it up by just throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall, hoping something
It's almost
sticks.
like the opposite of what Game of Thrones did. So the Game of Thrones took a book that's arguably, slow and plotting in some places and cleaned it up and keeping the story tight and straight. And here they're kind of taking a book that's a series that's pretty tight on story and
very
really
tight.
And now they're kind of blowing it out. And I think that might be a mistake.
I do too. I hope they tighten it up.
I'm enjoying it. I would like to hear from people who have not read the books and see if they're enjoying it. Because if they are, then we're good.
Although I have to say that this marks a a milestone in my my history of as a consumer of audiobooks, because this is the first time I'm going back in my audio library to re-listen to something that I've already listened to.
There you go.
And I'm doing that with I've just started with Leviathan Wakes, because I'm like, I don't remember half this stuff. But you know what they are doing, and I said this last episode, they're doing a great job of throwing stuff from those little novellas into it. Yeah. Like Amos Burton and his whole thing about the churn, which is all about a short story that happens in this universe, and you learn all about the churn. So clearly it's being written by people who really know this series. I just really hope that they don't get carried away wanting to put their own imprint on it or whatever it is they're trying to do. So there's that. And then Russ recommended Shannara. And so I'm watching Shannara, the Shannara Chronicles. It's phenomenal. I'm really enjoying it. Great acting, great special effects, very cool high fantasy stuff with a really cool. I didn't like the first 3 books when I read them in high school. I was like, oh, Tolkien, and Tolkien, wannabe.
Yeah. Right.
And I stopped reading. Apparently, there's all kinds of cool stuff going on behind the scenes, or maybe he retconned it after the fact. But I'm really, really, really enjoying that. The only downside is that it's on MTV,
Right.
which is not a huge downside if you're watching it on demand, except that you don't even have to watch the commercials because they don't have the fast forward disabled like most networks do. But occasionally you just catching a little glimpse of what the commercials are for, the other shows on MTV, and you just feel yourself getting dumber every 5 seconds of that you digest.
Yeah, I guess.
So, this is the first time that MTV, since they stopped playing music videos, have done anything but destroy the culture. But I'm really, really enjoying it, which is weird for me. I went and saw Star Wars for the 5th time. Think I might be done. I think I might be all set, but I did want to see it in IMAX 3D. Mm-hmm. I don't think you need to see it in IMAX 3D. I mean, J.J. Abrams admitted that it wasn't directed for 3D. I didn't feel I gained a lot out of it. I didn't think. And for video games, I'm still going with Reese. We're playing Lego Indiana Jones lately.
Oh, I love that one. That was a good one.
I love that too. Although he can't handle the spiders, he'll actually back his guy up to avoid the spiders, which of course then drags the whole screen backwards. So you can't advance because the other guy won't move any forward. So I've got to kill spiders before he'll go.
Why did it have to be spiders,
screen.
Craig? Why did it have to be spiders?
Exactly. Minecraft a little bit. I still don't get most of what's going on there. And then to echo what Dan was saying, a little bit of Skylanders. He got a bunch of Skylander stuff from his cousin, and we played a lot of that over the weekend.
Nice.
Which one are you playing? Trap Team or?
No, just we have an old Xbox 360, and almost all the games are old. He's 5. He doesn't care. He loves it, whatever it is. So no need to get the latest stuff, really.
Gotcha.
Russ, what about you?
Well, on the reading front, I am also enjoying Audible. And Craig, if people want to get in on the Audible deal available from the D6G, how do they do that?
Well, it's awesome if you do this because it helps the D6 generation and it gives you something cool. Go to the D6generation.com, find the little stack of books. No, it's not the stack of books. It's the Audible logo
right
on the right-hand side. And click on it. You follow that through. Get yourself a 30-day free trial membership and a free book. It's a free credit towards almost any book in their catalog. You get to keep it forever. You get access to all the cool deals that they just nonstop rolling sales that they've got over there all the time, and it costs you nothing. I mean, then you cancel at the end, you're all set. I meant to do it just for one free book, and I've been doing it now for about 4 years. Russ has been doing it for I think 1 million, right?
Yeah, I got a lot of books now. And I have to say, the latest books I've added to my collection, and like Craig, I've gone back too because the books stay in your collection forever. I've gone back and re-listened to like Dark Tower by Stephen King. I don't even know how many times I listened to that series on Audible. Potter's on there now, which I love Harry Potter, of course. But lately, so one of our listeners recommended the Iron Druid Chronicles.
Yep,
and
good stuff. I've listened to all those. Actually, I read all those.
I'm now in the second book, and I am loving this series even more. I'm really, really enjoying it. It is... as I said before, it's a little bit derivative of Dresden because, Druid living in modern times. He's not a PI, but it's a similar situation where it's modern times, but all of the, supernatural stuff is real in some way or another. But the really interesting part is all the pantheons are real. So anything anyone's pretty much ever believed in is out there someplace. And I love the fact that everybody just hates Thor. Thor is just apparently the biggest jerk.
He's a jerk.
And everybody hates him. It's awesome. So people are always trying to hire the Druid. Would you go kill Thor for us? We'd really appreciate it. So it's really interesting. And I just like his character. I like his dog. I think his dog's my favorite character in the book actually right now, who he can talk to because, of course, Druid. So it's really neat. If you like Druid character, he plays right into the classic Druidic character you think of if you've been playing RPGs for as long as I have. So it just really plays right up to that. It's a lot of fun. He battles witches and all kinds of other supernatural creatures. He's friends with the local werewolf pack, and his lawyer is, of course, a vampire because lawyers, are vampires, to be honest. So it's just really like little stuff like that. It's just full of all kinds of great fun, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's got a lot of humor packed in there, but there are spots where you really get very care a lot about the characters in the story as well. So really enjoying that. Highly recommend it. Like Craig, enjoying Shannara. I'm really surprised. My whole family watched the trailer, and they were intrigued but very, very skeptical. Like my girls were like kind of picking on it and saying, "Oh my God, this is going to be lame." And after the first episode, we were sucked right in. And we're all caught up and are loving every minute of it. You know what's funny? The budget and the CGI and the makeup is surprisingly good.
Yes. Yep. I would say the acting is not as strong.
Yes.
As some other new shows lately, but there's some nice stuff going on there too.
And the story's compelling, and you care about it, and so it's interesting. Also, another show I'm enjoying is The Librarians. Have you guys seen this show?
Yeah, I heard of it.
So Noah Wiley's in it, but he's been appearing in it more, but he's sort of a cameo, and it's a reboot of an old movie he was in. But essentially, it's kind of like Doctor Who meets Indiana Jones. So there's these people that
I'm intrigued now.
Yeah, so it's these people. There's this idea that there's this librarian and there's this library. Now the library exists in an alternate dimension that sort of moves around. And the librarian's job is to go out and find magical items and keep them safe and store them in the library. So like Excalibur's in there, and elements of the cross are in there, and the all kinds of crazy stuff like that. And anyway, in the beginning of the season, the library does something weird and starts summoning a bunch of new librarians, and they end up with 4 instead of 1. And now we're in the second or third season. I can't even remember. I get second. And it's really getting pretty good. In this particular episode, they had to do time travel. And there's lots of nods for geeks in this show, by the way. And so they go into the time travel artifact room, Dan. So you'll like this. They go in there, and of course, there's a bunch of stuff covered in, white sheets like you cover your old furniture in. And they're trying to find the time travel device they need. And as they're peeking under the sheets, you see what's clearly a bumper and a license plate of a DeLorean, and they cover that up. And then it goes under another sheet, and you can clearly see it's a blue police box, right? And they're going around, and you're seeing all these different times. And then, of course, they get to the one they need, and it's some little artifact thing. But it was just there's little geeky references like that. It's not the greatest acting. It's definitely a bit cheesy. It's targeting the family audience, so it's definitely more of a something you watch with like Once Upon a Time level is what we're talking about here. But it's really fun. We're really enjoying it, and the kids like to watch it, and the whole family's enjoying it.
But
So
John Larroquette is in it, so how can you complain?
John Larroquette is actually he's sort of the keeper of the library. He's sort of like the smart, wise guy, and he's been around a long time. He's actually I don't want to spoil it, but he's been around a long time. So he's an interesting character too.
Where do you watch that? Is it on Netflix or?
I watch it on Xbox. I think it's also on iTunes. And I don't know the network it's on, but it's on one of those like family, ABC Family, or one of those, it might be AMC. I can't remember, one of those channels. But you'll find it on one of those shows. Yeah, we're enjoying it. We really enjoy it, especially now. There's not a lot of shows right now. We're all caught up, waiting for some of the new seasons to start. We're having a good time with it. So
cool.
So, phew, is that achievements?
That is achievements.
The D6 generation. Not as good as Lord of the Rings, but better than The Hobbit.
But The Hobbits has the lovely hobbitses. Smeagol, there is only one hobbits in The Hobbits. There are 1, 2, many hobbits in The Lord of the Rings.
Hey, you know what that sound means? It's time to talk about our friends at wolflair.com, makers of some of the best gaming software anywhere, including my personal favorite now. Army Builder was my favorite, Craig, and it still is my standby. I use it for my miniature gaming all the time.
Oh, it's so nostalgic.
It's not just no better way to build an army quick and easy and have all the references right there and everything to go, especially for those, heavier, larger model count miniature games. But I've really fallen in love with RealmWorks now. I just think it's fantastic. I love how easy it is to track my whole campaign, network, and link everything together. And, of course, Hero Lab is a great way to create your characters. And now, with the D&D 5th Edition SRD coming out, now D&D 5th Edition is coming to Lone Wolf Development, available in Hero Lab and RealmWorks in the very near future. So keep an eye on that as well.
Really?
Really exciting stuff.
Nice, cool.
So I love all three pieces of software, Craig. I use them daily, like literally every day.
Well, I mean, they all really take those parts of your gaming that are normally sort of onerous, and they make it fun in and of themselves. So it's really they're really excellent at putting together the tools necessary to make that preparation part of the game just as fun as the game itself.
Right. And don't take our word for it. Head on over to wolflayer.com and try the free trials. Try the games out. See what you think. And then if you love them, buy them. That's how it works.
That's
so
right.
Check it all out over at wolflayer.com. And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present... Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep. Seriously, Wakeland, I used to have my own segment, and now I'm relegating to announcing this pap. Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey, and welcome to another App of the Ep. This time around, I'm going to talk... It's kind of a shame to call it an app, really. It's a full-on, I guess it's kind of a AAA title. This is the new Homeworld Deserts of Karak. Now, if you're an RTS fan and you missed Homeworld, you missed one of the great RTSs of the early 2000s. So this is a great game. It was the premise was you had this giant home ship in space, and you commanded a fleet of vessels that deployed from the ship. And you were trying to sort of go to a new galaxy, and you'd fight various waves of enemies. And it was a really, really cool, beautiful RTS. Really some neat things done with squadrons and full-size fleet engagements. A really neat game. So Homeworld's Deserts of Karak is interesting. It is a prequel to the original Homeworld series, but instead of being in space, you are now on a desert planet. The world is kind of a ruin, and you now have this giant transport sort of land aircraft carrier, if you will, that you're in command of, and you send vehicles out to combat. And it's really a great-looking RTS. I really like the visuals on this. It also seems to play really, really well, cleanly, well-polished, even on mid-range systems, which is very nice. You're getting a nice high-end video game feel but you don't need the latest and greatest systems, but it does reward that if you've got that stuff. What I also like was interesting was really thinking about Homeworld in general and how it's a space fleet game. I kind of just thought, they take the space concept and just put it on the ground, but they really use the land to their advantage here. And what I really like about this, unlike most RTSs, when you think about RTSs like StarCraft, you're just sending waves of guys at each other. This has that element to it, but also you really see the terrain in action, and there's actually a tactical view. And when you're clicking move, you can actually see where the vehicles will move, when the lines of a site will become exposed, and you can sort of set up these really cool ambushes with using the terrain to your advantage, doing some really cool things that are a little atypical for most RTSs. So if you're a tactical miniature war gamer and you're really interested in all the different elements of combat, from long-range artillery to fast, light fighting vehicles and everything in between, this game's got all that as well. So if you like your RTSs but want a little more tactical depth, take a good hard look at this one. One more thing I wanted to mention too is the atmosphere of this game is fantastic. Not only are the visuals really, really cool, and the cutscenes have sort of this combination animation but really cool CGI effect. I have to say that the audio is really, really cool, too. The game is extremely immersive. It does a great job of giving you that feeling that you're actually in command of a large military operation. There's this great background chatter going on between the various commanders of squadrons and TACCOM and other elements of the operation. And some of that background chatter actually impacts the game and actually kind of brings you back into it and gives you alerts. It's just really, really well crafted and really gives you a beautiful, beautiful feeling of immersion in this universe. So really some really interesting stuff going on here, a lot of innovative gameplay, and really an amazing way to take what was originally an engine for space combat and bring it to the ground. That's Homeworld Deserts of Karak. Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the Ep, a segment in which, hey, less of that, more just getting on with the show. Seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class. Hey, and welcome back. And since we have Dan on the show, and Dan, thanks again for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Dan's moniker now, as you mentioned earlier, is the Tabletop Tycoon.
Mm-hmm.
Because, Dan, you have so many fingers and so many pies. I think there are many pies that involve the Dan Yarrington fingers now at this point.
Now, Russ, is it tycoon or is it tychoon?
It depends.
What's the spelling of that?
It depends on the part of the world you're from, I think.
That must have been the confusion.
I think so, yes. I was going for the Yiddish spelling of tycoon.
Yes, indeed.
Little known. But so, Dan, you've been involved with the industry so long now, and you've done so many things. I was really.
We remember him when.
Yes, I really want to chat with you. It seems like there's been so many mergers, so many changes in the industry. It's been evolving a lot, and I'd love to hear sort of what your take.
Whether or not we've been keeping track of it for the results of the
we don't even know what's going on anymore at this point.
No, we have no clue.
So we kind of were hoping you could kind of tell us what's been going on, kind of give us your insights into that, and then maybe how some of those changes have impacted you and all your various business ventures.
Sure. Yeah, and it's funny to me when I go to conventions and stuff, which I'm doing less now that we have another little one on the way in March. But it's
congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, this will be 3. So I'm not traveling to any of the shows this spring. Which normally when I go to GAMA and Toy Fair and Nuremberg and all those, they're industry shows. They're not like conventions. They're trade shows. And so you're talking with a lot of people, and it's funny to me being as relatively young in the industry as I am, but having been in it for so long, the people that I run into that don't remember stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, remember when we got stuff from Blackhawk? And they're like, who is that? And I'm like, yeah, so do you remember Blackhawk Distributors? They were this random distributor in a barn in the middle of Rockford, Illinois somewhere. And other people are just like, I have no idea who that is. There's just some random, it's just people that have I've been in the industry for 10 years. And I'm like, yeah, that's a long time. I haven't been around that long. And then I'm like, oh, wait, we had I think Myriad had our 15th anniversary last year. I think this is our 16th, going on our 17th anniversary now. Wow. And that's just since Myriad. So I've been in the industry since 96. So this is actually my 20-year anniversary.
You're getting old, Dan, is what you're telling us. You're getting old.
Wow.
Yeah. But and it's funny because then people go oh, so how old are you? And I'm just like, well, younger than you, obviously. Right? But I've always sort of trended older. Even when I was in school, I was always, hanging out with the older kids. So just by a couple grades. So, but it's interesting how much, and I also have a fairly good memory. So I remember stuff that other people forget from oh yeah, I remember 12 years ago when we were at GAMA and there was a seminar and he said this, and they were like, what? Because there's no recordings of these. This was pre-podcasting. This was nobody was video recording any of this stuff. Now it's all, here's the Fantasy Flight, in-flight report in HD video on YouTube. Right. So that's definitely changed a lot. But tracking the sort of genesis of the Tabletop Tycoon, and really the only reason we did that ridiculous moniker, in addition to me wanting to wear a cowboy hat for no reason, is that we had to come up with a name for our overall company. So originally we just had Myriad Games, and then we expanded and we had Game Salute, which originally way back in the day, 2009, did just games and news reviews and supporting people. And we had this very vague saying, we want to provide tools and services to make the games industry a better place. And people were like, yeah, right, whatever, and we were sort of that way too. I wanted to do something beyond Myriad, right? I wanted to do something bigger than what just retail stores do, because there were all these other things. I just got sick of hearing people whine in the industry. Oh, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't. I was like, well, then you should do something about it. But the industry has dramatically shifted since then. I mean, the introduction of Kickstarter, which obviously we've been involved in since way back through our involvement with Alien Frontiers back when as one of the first games, and that was 2011 maybe, if I remember right. It's hard to keep track of these days, but that was just oh yeah, whatever, and then over time that just sort of took over to the point where, I would estimate, and I see this in my talks with online stores as well, that I think, probably the majority of spending of actual dollars that's spent online, if you consider Kickstarter just part of the online tabletop games channel, is actually spent through Kickstarter. It's 55% or something. I'm just guessing. I haven't done analysis on these, but it does seem like, anecdotally and looking at the actual numbers that we can see on Kickstarter, which is all public, and then looking at the numbers that we have from ICB2 and various other industry organizations, you can sort of see that it's a huge chunk, right? And so then you've got a big chunk of online sales through Amazon or other online stores, and then you've got this winnowing element of sales that's going local, and a lot of that is not necessarily for price. That's there's a bunch of internet studies that have to play with this, and if you just look at what was Amazon doing in 2008. Right, versus what they're doing now, as far as the level of service. Right, we all have Amazon Prime accounts, and we get stuff in 2 days. And there's an expectation that's changed socially in our society, and that's really impacted tabletop games as well. Right, so that direct sales, that's a big thing. Right, that's effectively what Kickstarter is, and then that's just another piece of what's online. So that, from a retail standpoint, has shifted dramatically. So going from, a game that started doing just sort of general services and news, and then we went into fulfillment, which of course is now called Ship Naked, and then we went into distribution, which is now called Hit Point Sales. And the reason a lot of people say, oh, you just changed your names. Well, we didn't change the name for no reason. The companies got big enough that they actually became separate companies. And so that's where Tabletop Tycoon came in, is we had to come up with a name for what's the parent company going to be that owns all these companies. So that's Tabletop Tycoon owns Myriad Games, Game Salute, Ship Naked, and Hit Point Sales. They're all sister companies. And so that's, as this developed, really Game Salute was like the publishing division, quote unquote, right? That actually makes games like Nothing Personal and Alien Frontiers and Princess Bride games. That was the last thing to happen in that cycle. But it was the sort of the name that everything was under, and that was a little confusing for a time. So that's really where Tabletop Tycoon came up, and that's sort of a very quick overview of how we developed over that time frame. And that was just in response to what the industry was doing, I think. Right. And you guys can see that on the ground where you are too.
Yeah, well, it's funny it happened that fast, and it's also interesting because it seems like that's a trend as well. Like you think about Google Alphabet in the tech industry and things, where these holding parent companies now are forming to become umbrella companies for a bunch of smaller concerns. It's sort of interesting that you guys went that route also. So not really surprised, but it's interesting that you developed that well. And is that in response to how it sounds like it's exactly in response to how the industry's been changing and how people's spendings have changed and where the money goes has changed, and really much how people get games has changed.
Sure, absolutely. And we've seen that, back in 2013 was a huge growth year for us, and really 2014 and 2015, both really strong growth years, but 2013 is where really things started to explode for us as a company writ large. And that was when now we're at a point, and we'll come back to this later, where our retail chain, Myriad Games, is really going from a retail chain, which it started out as just one store. And then in 2010, we expanded out to 2, and then we expanded to 3 and 4 and 5. And we actually got up to 5 locations at one time, I think. And now we're actually going back to one location, just one central location to serve Southern New Hampshire, because at the same time that we were expanding, the industry, the local sales industry, was contracting. Oh, and one of the big points I want to bring up there, because this was a really valid point somebody mentioned on Facebook when I was talking with them about this, was that it's not necessarily because of the price. All these studies that track, why people buy online, it's not price. Price is not the number one. It's the number 3. It's like number 1 is convenience, right? And number 2 is easier information gathering, basically. And that's the major thing, is that people they're used to doing it, right? When you can, as somebody put it, you can just click a button on your phone and have something in 2 days or a day or the same day, right? Cody, who's out in Indianapolis, he's in like the sweet spot Amazon test bed. So whenever they roll out a new thing like same day delivery, they always do it in his area. And so he's like, oh yeah.
Has he been hit by a drone yet?
Yeah, that's what I want.
Those are illegal still so far. But I'm sure they will be one of the first markets that, that does that. So it's interesting because, what happens is availability. That's actually the major issue.
Yes.
It's not that we can't, it's people go, oh, I saw this new hot game on BGG, and it used to be I saw this hot game on BGG, and it's coming out 3 months from now. And so, hey, I'll tell my local store or I'll order it online or whatever, right? But there was a delay. It comes out a long time from now. And now when stuff's going up on the buzz, you sort of have these 2-pronged approach. You have, it's hot on Kickstarter. So let's say Tiny Epic Western from Gameland Games right now is like number 1 on the hotness because it just launched on Kickstarter. And so, everybody's talking about that. And then there'll be like,
I'm on that. Russ, you on that?
I'm not.
You got to get on that.
Oh, I got to get on that one? Okay. All right.
We played a copy the other day at Myriad. It was fun. They sent an advanced copy out, and obviously I have to get a promo card in that because I have I have to have a Tycoon promo card.
You wear a cowboy hat. I feel like you should be in these cowboy hats.
I felt a little silly because I wear that hat all the time. Just for people that are like, oh, you just
no, it's a thing now. We talk about it all the time locally.
It started with the string tie,
right?
I still have the bolo tie, the Captain America bolo tie. I actually have a bunch of bolo ties, but the Captain America one's the one I wear the most. Mm-hmm. But I just decided at some point, I don't know if it's a midlife crisis or something. I was just like, yeah, I like wearing a Stetson, so I got a Stetson, and I wear it like every day. It's not like I put it on for conventions or something. But so I'm at the store playing for game night, and I realize that I'm playing a game called Tiny Epic Western with a guy, I don't know if you know him, Brian Bollinger. He has a game company called Wild East Games, and so he's a big Wild West fan too. He does like the dressing up. He's got a big like handlebar mustache, and he has like big pictures of him, and he has actual sheriff's badges, like metal sheriff's badges that he had made up for himself. So he's sitting there playing with me, and I'm wearing a cowboy hat and a bolo tie, and I was just like, we are the most appropriate people to be playing this game right now. But there's hot stuff like that, and then it'll be 6-9 months before it actually comes back around to sort of being hot again, right? Because everybody sort of fires and forgets. They go, okay, I got it. I'm excited about it for 30 days, and then I'm not really excited about it anymore. And then I get excited about it when it shows up magically in the mail. It's like a time capsule. And then we get so much of this because you have to imagine from Ship Naked, we ship hundreds of campaigns for all different companies, and so we'll get these people that are just like, I haven't got my game yet, and we're like, which game? Because we look them up and they have 7 games that came from us, right? Or they'll go, oh, I got my game today. I don't know what it is. And that's not just stuff that we're shipping. It's everybody's like, I ordered stuff on Kickstarter and I don't even know what it is anymore because it's been not even if it's not even because it's delayed, right? Although most games period are delayed, right? It's that you just forgot about it. The buying pattern has changed. Right. You either want it instantaneously. And by instantaneously, people are willing to say, well, but maybe it's actually faster for me to order it online, right? Because I don't have to like make a trip to the store to buy it. I found myself doing that I don't want to go to Target, I'll just order it on Amazon. So the same thing affects local game stores, obviously.
I find myself, and this is something that's interesting. So for many years, I resisted Amazon, and I was a huge Barnes & Noble fan. So I read a lot of books. Also, I know I listen to a lot of Audible. I talk on the show all the time, but also being in the technology industry, I read a lot of technology, books and get reference books. And I would go to Barnes & Noble all the time. And one of my big favorite things about Barnes & Noble back in the day was that, and this is one of the advantages brick and mortar has in general, is that I can go there, look through all these books, and find the one I want. And when you're looking for like technology books and things, these are like $50, $60 books. These aren't investments you want to just, buy the wrong one and have a hard time referencing it or whatever. So I'd love to be able to go there, look through them, pick the one I want, purchase it. So I was very religious about only buying from Barnes & Noble. When my kids are born and they did a lot of reading, I did the same thing. And what I've noticed since Amazon Prime came out, and also since Barnes & Noble has tried to respond to this, and I think this is the same in the gaming industry too. So Barnes & Noble's tried to respond to the whole people are buying their books online by offering different products. And now a huge percentage of the Barnes & Noble retail space is dedicated to, things that affect you guys, like games, but also toys and all these other things. And so when I go in there, it's funny, my girls will go in wanting a specific book. They'll read a specific series, or there'll be a new release in here's the irony of it. You go into Barnes & Noble, and a brand new book just came out for a series that's been on a while the girls didn't know about. They'll see it right in the front of the store. It's an impulse buy. They want to get it, but it's book 5. They didn't know this series existed. So they go to the shelf in Barnes & Noble to get book 1. It's out of stock. Now I have 2 choices. I can go order it from Barnes & Noble, but if I pull up my phone and push the Amazon button, I literally get it the next day. And why would I not do that? I don't have to come back to the store. Now, Barnes & Noble can ship it to my house for free, but I'll probably get it in about a week. So why would I not? So there's Amazon's losing a sale to me because Barnes & Noble doesn't have the depth of inventory. And I'm finding that more and more. I go in there, they don't have as many. They used to be the place you go for every single book you want. It's not that way anymore. And gaming stores are becoming the same way. They don't have the depth of inventory because they can't afford it. And so I go in there.
And it's not necessarily, I want to hit on that point quick because it's not necessarily that you can't afford it, right? It's that it's a simultaneous element of Barnes & Noble can't afford to carry every book because Barnes & Noble isn't the only place selling books anymore, right? So it doesn't have the revenue from everybody buying books from Barnes & Noble to have, or just Borders or whoever it was at the time, right? But they're not buying it locally, so then they don't have the sales revenue from that to increase their stock levels.
Right.
So you have this declining cycle where, and we've gotten this complaint at Myriad, you don't have as much stuff on the shelves. And I go, well, you just told me in the last sentence that you spend half of your money on Kickstarter. So you're wondering why I don't like that money comes from somewhere, right? You go to Barnes and Noble, you buy a book, they pay their expenses, they pay their employees, they have some money left, they invest that in inventory, right? And that's a cost of goods. It's a big expense for them. But if you reduce the amount of spending that they have, then you're reducing the amount of margin that they have to do that. And if they're looking at their margins and saying, oh, I we'll invest in tabletop games, they're better margins, which is kind of funny coming in an industry where you're losing 3 to 5% margin every 5 years, it seems like. It's changed a lot. I mean, you saw the latest thing on Barnes and Noble, right? They apply for liquor licenses in some territories. Right. So they're definitely becoming more of that, what they call the third place. And I was just visiting a great bookstore up in Concord here in New Hampshire, Gibson's bookstore, which is the oldest bookstore in New Hampshire. I think it was like founded in 1898 or something. And great selection, great like downtown location. And walk around, I find all this stuff I want to buy, and I don't do a lot of shopping. I mean, I basically work from 6:30 in the morning or 7:30 in the morning till 6:30 at night, and then I sometimes do work at night too. So I don't have a lot of spare time, but I do live in the world, and I have to go out and buy things, right? And so I like looking at how we are buying things and thinking about why am I buying stuff? And I really enjoy that experience. Like I literally had 2 orders. One I placed on Amazon because it was easy and I wasn't going to be up in Concord anytime soon. And the other one, I actually found it easier to just email them. Like I was like, I don't want to bother placing an order on Amazon. I have to click like 3 buttons or something, right? I have to like search for it and I have to do this and do this. I just dropped an email to them. They were like, oh yeah, we have that. Oh no, that's not available anymore. Like they were able to basically do all like the searching and everything for me because they already knew it. They already had, they were able to know that, out of these 20 games, to put it in board games terms, out of these 20 games that are on the top 20 on BGG, these are the ones that actually people really play now, which is more what gamers care about. Like they don't care that, Twilight Struggle is a great game. Like that's the same relevance as like Gone with the Wind is a great movie. It's like, that's nice, but nobody watches Gone with the Wind now. They watch Star Wars, right? It's still a great game. You should go play it, but it's not going to show up at your game store or you're in your game night wherever you play every week, right? And that's something that the dedicated merchant, I guess, is a better way to phrase it, right? Because they could be an online merchant or a local merchant, but they would have insight into what's available, why people are buying it. That's an important thing. And then you also can answer those questions that like, computers can't answer that well, which is like, yeah, I'm looking for that game with the picture of this guy on it and it's worker placement or something. And it's just like stuff that's really awkward to try and search for online. You really go back to your like library research days and you have to try and remember how to search for things. And that's its own, like you'll hear that term Google Foo, right? My Google Foo is strong because I can like search for stuff. But there is a better experience, I find, when you actually go and you can discover stuff that you wouldn't have found anyway, right? As much as it's powerful to say, I'm watching Netflix. Oh, if you like this, you'll also enjoy this. Those are effectively just based on what people are saying. Right. That's how they get that data. So how much more basic and sort of simple and easy to just go to a person and be like, I like Star Realms. What do you recommend? Right. And then that specialist, and that's the key, is they really need to be a specialist, should be able to say, then you'll enjoy this. Because part of their goal should be to get you to not buy games that you're not going to enjoy. This sort of shotgun effect of, you'd rather have a sniper rifle than a shotgun because shotgun effect of, I spend a bunch of money and it's loud and it's noisy and it's imprecise and I'm going to buy 6 games. And I'm going to open 2 of them, and the other 4 will sit on my shelf because I bought the wrong games. And then I'm going to play 2 of those games, and I don't even like them. Like I just switched to Apple Music, and I used to go buy CDs, right? Physical thing. And this is a whole digital disintermediation issue for digital stuff, which is another thing that drives Amazon Prime, right? They have their own digital content. Right. But I just love being able to go, hey, new releases came out this week. I'm going to go listen to them because I can listen to them for free for the most part. I can listen to most anything like as it releases for free with my subscription. Obviously, I'm paying $10 a month or whatever. And then I find I don't regret those purchases. That's a really important aspect, I think, is I used to go buy a bunch of CDs and I wasn't buying them blindly, right? I would go like, I heard about this on some music critic said it was good or a friend said I would like it or whatever. And I buy it, but probably only about 30% of those I actually liked. Like I actually listened to the album more than twice, right? And then, but some of them when you find something that's amazing, a movie, a book, music, whatever, you really love it, right? You have those albums you listen to over and over again. You have the book that you finish the last page and you close it and you go, wow, I can't wait for the next, Jim Butcher book to come out or whatever that is, right? Because it hits you in some way. And the proliferation of media, which especially applies to games. I mean, Essen had the most. I think we had over 1,000 games debut at Essen this year. It was crazy. And compared to previous years where you'd have 200, right? So tons more information. That's not going to change. You're going to have this. What's that effect, Russ? You might know. That's like a technology term of the factor of how much information proliferates over time.
Oh, I don't know that. I know Moore's law, which is how quick the technology advances, but I don't know if it's the same.
Right. There's something else about there's maybe it's just calculations of saying, we will generate more content in the next year on the internet.
Oh, yes, right.
Than we generated in the last 150 years.
There was something about pictures too. Like selfies are so strong now. Like we take more pictures in the last year than we took in our entire, the existence of humanity. Like, so it's a crazy metric like that. Yeah.
So what becomes more and more important there is the role of what I'll call the curator, right? Which is, somebody that actually knows can link you up with what you're going to enjoy.
But see, here's another problem, Dan, I think in that, and I agree with you on that. The curator is important. What I'm finding so Barnes & Noble used to be an awesome curator. Like you could go into Barnes & Noble or another really old bookstore, right? And they would be like, we only know books. So if you ask us about a book and you come in there and say, hey, there's this book about Rangers and I think he's like a disciple and there's this cover and it's got like a guy on a throne and they'd be like, oh, Ranger's Apprentice. Do you want, which book in the series are you interested in? And lately I go in there and because now they've got to know about board games and they've got to know about music CDs and they got to know about everything else. You go in there and I start to find that because of the internet and the research I did to find the book my kid wants, that I know more about it than they do. And that becomes a problem.
That's a challenge with that sort of broadening, right? Because they're trying to be a lifestyle store.
Right.
They want you to go there and that's the move to the cafe model, right? That's back with what was it? You've Got Mail, where they had, was that the movie with Tom Hanks where he played basically the CEO of Barnes & Noble? Right. And
that's I can't remember.
I thought it was You've Got Mail.
No, You've Got Mail is the one where they live. You might be right on that one. Yeah,
I think it's You've Got Mail. Anyway,
right. Yeah, I was thinking Sleepless in Seattle. You're right.
Yeah, I think it's not. So, but he goes, oh, we're going to take this sort of community games bookstore experience, and we're just going to make it, corporate. Basically, we're going to expand it out. Isn't that a great idea? And so that you put the cushy chairs in there and all that sort of stuff and get people to come in and there's that law. If you read any Paco Underhill, who does a lot of retail writing, there's that law of you want to keep people in the store. The longer you keep them in the store, the more likely they are to buy something. And that has a couple predicates which don't really translate to the gaming industry. One, there's this thing in buyer terminology that you have to be willing and able to purchase. So if you're able to purchase, but you're not interested in what you're not willing to buy there for whatever reason, the price isn't right, they don't have the right thing or whatever, they're not willing to buy, that doesn't work. Or if they're not able to buy, so if they have spent all their money then they're not able to spend any more money, then it's immaterial if they're willing to buy everything in the store, right? So you have to have both of those things. And a lot of times I find in the gaming space, from a retail perspective, and this is fresh in my mind because we just had a big announcement. If you want to read it, you can just go to myriadgames.com. It's there about consolidating the stores down from, we have 3 right now, down to 1, and sort of rebooting the store, so to speak, right? And really saying, okay, let's take it back to what people are saying they want to have. And it's thinking about how that has shifted and how people want to buy stuff. It's very different now than what it was even 2 years ago, even a year ago. And I still think that there's I find myself going, to Target or to Barnes & Noble and going, wow, geez, they have Ticket to Ride in Target, right? Like they have Sushi Go in Target, right? They have all these games that are like heretofore, back in the day, 2003 or something, when Blockus came out. There was a good year there where we sold hundreds because hobby stores were the only place you could buy them, right? They weren't. Nobody at that time really bought a lot of stuff on Amazon. I mean, obviously Amazon was big, but not in the same way that it is now, right? That rate of proliferation is important, but all of that comes back around to availability, and that's the key point I was mentioning before. Is that it's not even so much the price. If the top 20 games that you want to buy, 10 of them I as a store can't buy because the publisher is selling them direct through Kickstarter, or you can't buy the version that you want because you got the fancy version with all the bells and whistles through Kickstarter, right? Which and to be, for anybody that's like, oh, but you do the same thing. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like that's what's so interesting about being in this role as Tabletop Tycoon is that I see things from all those different angles. I see it from the retail side and from this is how it's going to impact the shipping costs. And this is the production side of things as a publisher. And, we need to have this deluxe edition. We just launched Kingsforge Glassworks, and we have a deluxe edition and a standard edition, which is pretty standard, quote unquote, now on Kickstarter, right? It's, hey, this deluxe edition is only going to be available on Kickstarter and at conventions, and that's pretty much it, right? So if you want this content, you need to get it here. And for years and years, and there's still people that's anathema. Oh, every game should be the same, this sort of weird, but look at the numbers, right? The people that argue Kickstarter isn't a pre-order platform, Kickstarter shouldn't have exclusive content. The platform is what the people using it make it. And Kickstarter is a pre-order platform, and it is a thing that is driven, in tabletop at least, by limited content. That's sort of the very nature of it. It's something special. Otherwise, why would you pay for your stuff 6 months to a year in advance, right?
Well, it sounds like you're saying that, hey, this is the way, this is how, you're just kind of, and the industry in general is responding to what the people want, which is they want these more, some people really want these really blinged out, really fancy versions of games, and Kickstarter is allowing you to, companies to make those kind of games that might not otherwise exist in that realm, and they can still test those beds, and they can still make them pre-order platforms and get people excited and get the money up front to reduce their risk when they make them, and we're getting more games than ever, and many of them are fantastic. So it seems like that's the right thing to do. You're responding by doing that. Other game companies are obviously doing the same thing. It's working, and so it's shifting. So I wanted to kind of follow up with you a little bit on a couple big shifts that have happened in the industry. One is, how you guys are responding to it in retail. I want to talk a bit about more Myriad before we run out of time. But I also want to ask you a bit about what's driving some of the industry consolidation, right? So there's so many more games now, and it seemed like for a while there were a lot more game companies popping up. But we've seen a lot of consolidation lately with Asmodee and with Plaid Hat being purchased and other things happening. What are your thoughts on some of the consolidation and what's going on with Asmodee and other stuff?
Well, that's pretty obvious. Like, first of all, let's address the elephant in the room. Yeah. Asmodee North America announced their, new distribution method, right? Mm-hmm. Which is exactly the same distribution method that GameSleuth was doing for the last 3 years, right? It was literally exactly the same, like word for word. Mm-hmm. And that's, I'm not saying they copied us or anything. I'm just saying, like, they arrived at a conclusion that we arrived at a while ago. And I see that over and over again, which is that, and the reason it'll work for them, because by the way, GameSleuth just stopped that system October 1st, 2015, like 2 months before they announced their thing. We actually expanded.
Now, what is that system?
That system is basically it's a European system, actually. It's something that's very common in Europe. That's why Asmodee did it, right? Is that it's online stores pay a different price for games than local stores, period. Uh-huh. Because they're recognizing from the positive side of it, they're recognizing the value of what local stores provide. Like, we provide so much as a local store to the local community, and this happens in all retail. So the people that are like, this is tyranny or, fixing markets or whatever. No, this is a part of the free market, right? I am paying you for fundamentally different services if I have shelf space in a store versus if I have your space in a warehouse and you ship stuff for me. That's a different exposure, and there's a lot of stuff there. So that was sort of the argument there, is that local stores deserve more margin. That's how Chris Peterson put it, the CEO of, I was going to say Fantasy Flight, but now Asmodee North America. They say we pay in trade discounts, basically. We give you this. At mass market, this just happens in promotional offsets. Oh, we're going to give you crappy margin, but if you're in the Toys R Us flyer, then we'll give you $30,000 in promotional offsets, right? So that's how you get your margin. It's recognizing the value of what they're delivering. So online stores, because they're just delivering, because my assertion was always this, well, we sell through Amazon, and we get X amount of yield through Amazon. Yield is the amount of money that we get when we sell a game after we deduct all the fees, right? Shipping and Amazon fees and all that. Because, that free shipping that we all love so much, I guess who's paying for it? We are, right? The vendors are paying for it. And ultimately the customer is paying for it because the vendor has to work it into the price. But that core experience of living in this interrelated environment and I'm going to tie this all back around to why that consolidation is happening. But effectively, online stores make up so much sales now. This is the underlying reason behind that. It's so much of the sales. And I know what those numbers are because I deal with those online stores and I've sold to those online stores, and we know what the relative amount is. And I can tell you from 5 years ago how many copies of a game we used to sell locally, and now how many of those I ship to people that are local through Ship Naked that either bought it on Kickstarter or bought it through Amazon or bought it through a local distribution network, right? It's that they're sold online, basically. So Asmodee realized they're just leaving a lot of money on the table. And that's not surprising to anybody that was paying any attention to the European game market, because that is very common in Europe. So I called this back at, I don't know, Gen Con or Toy Fair or something earlier this year. It was obvious once Asmodee merged with Fantasy Flight that it was going to happen. And I think at that point they'd already acquired Days of Wonder. Now, the other big news, of course, is that they just basically acquired Catan, which was like 150% of the sales of Mayfair. I say that kiddingly, right? But like that was a huge thing, right? Catan Studio, which Pete Fenlon, the former CEO of Mayfair, is now going and running Catan Studio. And Asmodee just has all these huge brands, right? They've got games like Mealborn and Spot It, and like these are new, or I mean, Mealborn's from like 1962, but they're not like Hasbro, right? So if you looked at those numbers, it's like Hasbro, Mattel, and Asmodee. And like Spin Master's in there somewhere, and like there are these companies that are big in the tabletop space. But that's what they're doing, is they're realizing what Lego realized a long time ago, that that they deserve, that they're really generating the interest in that. And once you have such a powerful brand, and that's why it didn't work for GameSalute, right? Necessarily, was that it was too much infrastructure set up and not enough demand for our games. We don't have Star Wars. We don't have Seven Wonders. We don't have Ticket to Ride. Game stores, online and local, are not going to stop selling those games. Just because, right? I mean, look at the number of game stores that sell Cards Against Humanity, right? And they get a 0% discount on Cards Against Humanity. So it's a very interesting model, right? Because it feels more mercantile in a way, right? We were talking about Tiny Epic Western, and I love Westerns. I watch a lot of that stuff. And that's sort of how the mercantile set. Like, it didn't matter what the price was in St. Louis. It mattered what the price was on the frontier, right? Well, now everything gets smaller. That idea of like the world gets smaller because of shipping and communications and all that stuff. It gets faster and smaller and faster and smaller. I feel like the other side of that is that people want more of a direct connection. And I feel like we lose a lot of that when we're going so frenetically and we're so disparate. But to bring it back around to the why the consolidation, right? So number one's money, right? Eurazeo, which owns Asmodee, has a ton of money. And so that helps. That definitely helps to be like, we would like you, Plaid Hat. And so for Colby, right, it's a very simple decision. It's, hey, I don't have to do all the production and the sales and the marketing and all this other stuff. I just want to be a development studio. I want to make games. That's like the dream of every creative studio. Well, if you look at these other smaller companies like Upper Deck acquired, and I'm going to forget the name of it now, but Bring Out Your Dead. I don't know if you saw that name. And it's like tiny little game, right? I mean, it's Max who was one of the designer, would not say by any stretch of the imagination, oh, we're a big company, right? But they wanted that in there, and the numbers don't work out for small publishers. That's the big challenge. That's why the consolidation. And even, I would argue now, mid-sized publishers, it's going to get harder for them. You're going to have to see more consolidation of what you might consider mid-sized publishers or small-sized publishers. Mid-sized would be something like Stronghold, let's say. And so that is a big challenge for us. Like GameSalute, in perspective, is a small publisher, right? Maybe small, verging on medium as we get more of these titles that are selling through. But the numbers don't work in your favor. You got to spend all this money on marketing to get any sort of presence in the market, and that's where the Kickstarter companies come in, right? So you can run a very healthy business just on Kickstarter if you watch your shipping expenses, because that's like 40% of your expense, and that's where everybody gets burned. So it only takes you as an independent publisher or developer a couple of experiences like that, where you're like, I put all this time and effort and energy into this, and I made no money. I actually lost money, and then if anybody's interested in consolidating that, you're like, oh yeah, absolutely, right? And even the mid-sized companies have a lot of efficiencies to gain there. I mean, if even the large companies like Asmodee and Fantasy Flight and Days of Wonder can gain efficiencies that way, then of course the downstream companies, right, the middle and small sized companies can benefit from that. So it's like beer, right? It's going to be Anheuser-Busch and craft beer. Craft beer revival, right? That's the independent publishers are. And so there's a place for that. That's fine. But we have to realize that, circling that back around to the retail side of things, that there are just titles. I think somebody mentioned in the discussion, I just won't accept that there's a game that you can't get. And I was just like, well, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to, because that's the world we live in. Like, unless you want me to buy it and sell it to you for double what you would have paid for it if you bought it directly from the company, there is very little way for me to get every game for you, because I'm not in control of whether the publisher wants to sell it to me at wholesale. And that wholesale margin is what allows me to pay my staff well and pay for the roof over all of our heads and pay for heat and electricity and all these things that we use, right? And pay for all the inventory that you want to be able to showroom and see those things in person. That's why it's interesting that Amazon just opened their first bookstore. You heard about this?
Yes, I did. That got interesting.
And it's just like, really? You're like, I guess. I mean, you have tons of money. You can do whatever you want, but really? Yeah. So there is, and you saw that with like Reaper Miniatures back in the day. I think they might even still have stores. They had like a few stores, and they ran stores for the explicit purpose, same reason that Fantasy Flight had their event center, for the explicit purpose of understanding how retail worked, of knowing how to merchandise their stuff and how many they could sell and that sort of stuff, right? So that they could really have that full vertical integration. And so that's what Tabletop Tycoon has sort of become, not by intent necessarily, but just by happenstance, is that we've sort of become this vertically integrated element where we do everything from make the games to the only thing we don't do right now is print the games, right? We create the games through publishing, we ship the games through shipping, we distribute the games and sell them all over the world, and we sell the games in the local market through our local stores. So it's
I think that's really interesting.
It's very interesting, that consolidation.
It is, and I think it's also interesting what's happening in the retail space. And you mentioned Amazon opening their own stores, and I think it's really interesting because technology, which is an industry I know pretty well, has gone through a similar metamorphosis where, if you think about back in the 80s and the 90s, you had all these large retail stores offering all kinds of technology, right? You had Computer City and Circuit City and Radio Shack, which has basically just gone under as well, and all these different big box and small local, computer stores. You go in and buy whatever you want, whatever product you needed. All of a sudden, as the internet grew and grew, and of course, technology people being the way they are, as being the forefront of the internet, that all went away, and everybody started ordering their stuff online. You could get, Computer Shopper went online, and Egghead and all those other services went online. You started buying everything online, and everybody thought that the computer retail and technology retail was dead, and it essentially was dead, with a few exceptions like Best Buy, but that's it's very, very few. All of a sudden, not that many years ago, Apple opens up a retail store, and it's successful, and then Microsoft opens up a retail store, and it's successful. So there is a model. There's almost this idea that the shopping experience has to be very boutique and very much an experience, and not just you're going in there to necessarily, buy any kind of product you can possibly imagine. It's definitely a shift, and it's changing. And
but think why those models work, right? What makes those models work? What makes the Apple Store earn? One location can get $70 million in revenue and net like $30 million, which, if you know anything about retail, is crazy.
Right.
That's insane, right? How can they make that much money? Well, because it's vertically integrated.
Right.
They control the entire supply chain. They're selling only their own products.
Right.
And they have a very limited selection of their own products, right? They've selected those down. And so that's something that, now that we have a little more experience in the tabletop space, now that we have more experience in producing things, we actually could do that. And you see stores like Pastimes out in Illinois and various other companies, they make their own stuff, and those margins are much better, obviously.
Is this consolidation then, Dan? Is this consolidation sort of positioning Asmodee to be able to do that kind of stuff? It seems like they're getting there.
Think about it. Asmodee started out as stores in France.
Right.
Originally. Right. So they started and did that whole thing. Now, I think most of the big companies are looking at it going, I don't really want to be in retail. Retail's for suckers, right? Now, because they can do so much of that online, or they can just work with like 4 online stores and that will sell 80% of their print run.
Right.
And then like the other local stores will lap up the rest of it. So I thought it was very interesting what Asmodee North America said, what Chris said in his letter, right, with the announcement was that they're very explicitly valuing that. They're saying we value this and we're going to pay for it. And however you pay for it, that doesn't really matter, right? Give them promo cards or whatever. But fundamentally, it doesn't matter if you have all this uproar on BGG and then the sort of hardcore gamer community. Honestly, as publishers, that is not the part of the industry they have to worry about. We don't have to worry about the people that love games and want to play them all the time. As you say, we're in sort of a golden age of content for those people. It's just like peak TV, that whole idea of peak TV, right? Is, we have so much stuff to choose from. I'm like, why is that a problem? Like, yes, I understand that like it's frustrating that I can't just watch everything, but do you really want to go back to the days when you were like, do I watch The Adventures of Lewis and Clark or whatever the hell it was called at the time, or do I watch, nothing because I have no option, right? I can watch, when I grew up, we had 3 channels. It was like 2, 4, and 7, and that was it. Now I just can't stand to watch commercials, right? I have subscriptions to Hulu, no commercial plan. I have Netflix. I buy stuff on iTunes. I watch stuff streaming through Apple TV, and I just don't want to have commercials. So the fundamental experience of visual entertainment has changed in that regard. The question about how it's impacting tabletop entertainment is a different matter. Is the future board game cafes? Is that what it's going to be, right? Is it you have to have restaurants and therefore it's really just a restaurant? And my counter argument for that is always like, if I told you you could run an oil change shop and a restaurant and the oil change shop was losing money and therefore you could make money at a restaurant, why would you have the oil change shop? These are fundamentally, aside from the fact that they have tables and chairs in them, unrelated businesses. Like, I understand that you want to have that experience of being able to go somewhere and hang out, but effectively what you're saying is you want a themed restaurant.
Right.
That's different, So I'm not even saying it's bad necessarily. I'm just saying that's not a game store anymore. Like that is an experiential center. And so it'll be interesting to see as we sort of reboot Myriad, and we're talking very closely with our local community, obviously, because that's who we serve, right? We serve local people. And so we want to know, I don't necessarily care what somebody in Seattle wants or what somebody in LA wants or what somebody in Skokie, Illinois wants, right? I care about what people in Southern New Hampshire want. That's what I'm worried about. And so that may be very different from what somebody in Skokie wants. That may be very different from what somebody in Orlando wants. And it may be very different from what an online shopper wants. Yeah. And it may just be that you have a group of people who buy online and that local stores trend much more towards the tabletop model, right? Tabletop the show now I'm talking about, right? Where you carry all the gateway games, you have a very welcoming environment, you play with people, you show them how to play, right? You host Boy Scout troops and Boys and Girls Club groups and, as many, like you're getting new people into the hobby and you don't really worry about the hardcore gamer who's going, well, I know you're going to give me 20% off, but could you make it 30?
Right.
And like, I've already turned around and I'm selling a bunch of games to the people that are happy to pay full retail because they didn't even know. Because fundamentally, this idea of like full retail, does anybody in the industry, even the cheapest skinflint on the internet, does anybody believe that tabletop games are not an amazing value for what we pay for them?
Right.
I don't believe it, right? Like I go anywhere, right? And I go, wow, I spend so much more money on this. And I still think I'm the type of person that goes to the movies, once a week if I can. I go to the movies at least once a month with the kids, right? We go see every movie that we want to go. Luckily, we have Chunkies, right? The cinema pub. Maybe that's the future of movie theaters, right? But I also love going to AMC and getting those awesome seats, right? And having just Sarah and I there and not bringing the kids. So I think there's room for different experiences, right? I think what we have to avoid is the idea that a certain publisher has to cater to all audiences. A certain gaming establishment, whether it's an online store or a local store, has to cater to all audiences. Why? Right? You've got the full service garages and you have the quick lube places. And those are different businesses, right? They're in the same sphere. But that's my sort of takeaway after thinking about this long and hard over the last many months as we've been implementing a lot of these changes and reading a lot of what's going on.
So as we run out of time here, but I do want to ask you a little bit about Myriad. We had a lot of folks ask us, obviously on the show here, we talk for many years about how we play at Myriad. And then, of course, lately we as Myriad's changed, we haven't been getting there as much. And I know you've been really re-examining it. So have you kind of decided, I know you're consolidating down back to one store, as you mentioned. What's your kind of gut feeling on where you're going to take Myriad now, or are you still sort of in the discovery phase?
Yeah, so I mean, we're rediscovering, I guess would be the best term. It's sort of like you're rediscovering skills that you used to use, right? Because a lot of the changes that we made, I mean, first of all, the people that say, oh, you changed the stuff, you moved my cheese, right? I liked this and you changed it. I don't like it anymore. Well, we didn't just change those things on a whim, right? There were other people that were saying, I want you to change this. And so fundamentally the question is, who do you listen to, right? Who are the customers that are actually buying stuff that want to spend money? And what I've realized over the last, especially in the last week, as we post announcement, basically, I think we announced last Friday, is that there's different groups of people. And the people that are saying, oh, I love having a huge selection of games to be able to browse and to have friendly people there that can talk to me about the games and show me the games. And I think a lot of it's going to be the tactile feel, being able to open the games and look at them and all of that, especially the core games when you don't know if you want to buy into a game. Like, you don't need to open the latest Android Netrunner data pack, right? Like, you already know you like Android Netrunner, but if you have never experienced Android Netrunner, yeah, you want to come in, you want to enjoy an event, you want to play, but that's a different audience from the people that want to effectively have a private game club. That's a different thing, and that's okay. That's fine. That there's different audiences there. So I think, I've heard a lot of this. Oh, I love how Myriad was 2 years ago. And I'm going, well, I wish that we were selling as much as we were 2 years ago, right? and our sales have gone up, but that was sort of a factor, of that we were expanding into multiple locations. And that's fundamentally why we're consolidating back to one. One, it's a lot easier to run. It's very difficult to find really good staff without denigrating any staff that have worked for us previously. It's just very difficult to deliver a consistent experience at the pay scale that the industry pays for tabletop game retail employees, right? And that's something that we're trying to raise intentionally. But especially in a relatively small metro area, that's very difficult to justify the expenses of that. It's a better service for the customer, right? Maybe it was more convenient that you had something near you in Nashua, but fundamentally, I don't think that matters. I think a lot of things get easier as you're just dealing with Myriad games. There's not a question about, think about little things like we take a picture of a game and we tweet it or we post it on Facebook or whatever, and we say, hey, this is in. In where?
Which store? Right?
At which store, right? Like, unless you're just going to get, and this is the predicated amount, unless you're going to get 3 times the sales and 3 times the budget to purchase inventory and buy fixtures and all of that, then that's not sustainable. And that's what we've discovered, is that there's just not that sustainable sales. And it's not hard to figure out why, because you've got a big chunk of sales that went away to Kickstarter, you got a big chunk that's online. But fundamentally, all that creates that sort of negative cycle that we've done. So with this reboot, what we're aiming to do is we're going to go back, sort of reset, right? It's like I saved my game 2 years ago. I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to reset to having one central location that can be that store where you walk in and you go, wow, they've got not everything, right? I mean, I don't even want to carry everything. Who wants everything, right? Most games suck. Let's be realistic, right? If you can't, you know what? Most of the games that I publish suck from the perspective of sales. Right. And that's what we fundamentally care about, because sales are the measuring stick by which we know if a game is resonating with the market. And the market is people. Do enough people like this game to open their wallets and buy it? That's it. That's what it comes down to. And so we want to focus on the games that we love, that we enjoy, that our local community enjoys, right? This isn't a dictatorial, I like whatever. I like pick some game that I can pick on. I like Anachronism. That's not a print game that I can pick on, right? I like Anachronism, so we're going to make the entire store Anachronism themed. It's like, well, that's great if like 100 people in the local area like Anachronism. Right. But if I'm the only guy, then no, that doesn't make any sense. And I would argue my rule is sort of double digits, right? To get to a sustainable basic community, you need double digits that are enjoying a game. Right. So 10 people or more in your community. Yep. Because that's where you're going to get to a point where they're going to, go around. So I think we're going to focus on selection. We're going to focus on service. We're going to be, remodeling the store as well. So, make sure that everything is back to that sort of immaculate level of cleanliness that when people would walk into the bathroom and be like, this is the cleanest bathroom I've ever seen in a game store. Yeah. And I'm like, thank you. And that's, honestly, that's gone down over the years because we just don't have the resources to maintain really good staff really good stock levels and really good service at all those locations because your turnover is too high. You can find really good people. I have amazing people that work for Tabletop Tycoon for me, right? We have I think we have something like 22 staff now. But about half of that was Myriad staff before. I think after the consolidation, we'll probably be at around 20, maybe 18. But we used to have an extra like 8 people. And those people, maybe they didn't want to work in a game store all their life, right? So my goal as a boss, as they're a member of our Tabletop Tycoon working family, is to find the best people and find the best positions for them so that they will be happy and fulfilled when they come into work every day, because that's how they do good work. And that's how the companies grow and expand. And so that's sort of where we're refocusing too. But that discussion is very much open now. So I would encourage everybody to come to, you can go to facebook.com/MyriadGames. You can email me directly, just dan@tabletoptycoon.com or dan@myriadgames.com. You can find me on Twitter. I have my own Twitter handle now, @tabletoptycoon. You can message me. You can call me. If you go read the letter on myriadgames.com, my phone number's at the end of it. I welcome people call me or text me. If I am putting my kids to bed or if I'm sleeping, I will not answer. Leave me a voicemail. But, I'm very open about that. And I hope that people appreciate that, right? Because this is very personal for me. This is my baby. This is a business, the whole business overall, that I've grown up over time. But I recognize that business needs to evolve, that the industry is evolving, and we don't necessarily know how. And we have to be okay with that uncertainty. We have to just listen to the people that are saying, I actually want to spend money in whatever business, right? For Ship Naked, I don't listen to the people that go, I don't want to ship naked. I listen to the people that go, Ship Naked's great. And I go, how can I make it better for you? That's what I do. That's what I should be doing, right? Not listening to the people that are going, well, I don't like Ship Naked. Why? Because I'm bad at math, effectively. Because I think I can do it cheaper. That's a whole separate discussion. But, right. Well, Dan, so for Myriad, I think hopefully people will see the new version of it. We'll be relaunching in February. We'll have a grand opening in March, right around March. I think it's the March 19th and 20th, the first weekend of spring. And you can, even if you're not around in our local area, you can follow us online and see how things are going.
Well, great. Well, Dan, thanks.
Very nice.
Thanks for giving us the insights. And I think it's, and also thanks for the candor. I think it's really, it's nice and refreshing to hear people who run businesses kind of say, yeah, this is what happened, and here's some things we want to fix, and we're taking a good hard look at ourselves and how we do business and trying to make it the best we can. I think that's fantastic. So thanks for sharing that, and I'll also really appreciate your insights as always into the industry as well.
Yeah, it's easy for people to say that it's just a rough economy. It's more interesting to hear the specifics about how it affects our hobby and what's going on out there.
Right, and to be very clear on this, I am agnostic in terms of how this all turns out. I'll be fine, right? Like, I just want to serve the tabletop industry in the way it wants to be served. That's what we're trying to find here, is I want to make, ship, and sell as many games as I can, as many awesome games as I can. That's why we embrace that moniker of Tabletop Tycoon. But whether that's in, a shipping container in a Walmart parking lot 10 years in the future or something, because that's how people decide they want to buy games, or if it's in, what you would think of now as a traditional game store, or if it's in a Subway, right? Like, however we do that, that's cool by me, because I think, the industry's growing. I think we can do amazing things to help keep that growing. That's what makes me excited every day when I go into work.
Well, great. Well, thanks, Dan, and thanks for the discussion. We'll be back after Hollywood and Total Fangirl to talk more with Dan and do a big game review here, not too distant.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, Total Fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter @Nicole Wakelin and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. Our shout out is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6Generation and you too can support the show. I have very sad news for Doctor Who fans, for all the Whovians out there. So it has just broken within the last I'm going to say couple days, that we're not going to get another season of Doctor Who until spring of 2017, which means we're going to be waiting for over a year to see more. Now, the exception might be a Christmas episode in 2016, which they are saying at the moment they are expecting to air, but that's almost a year away too, so it doesn't make things that much better. The reason they're saying they're doing this is because all sorts of things are changing. The big thing that's changing is Stephen Moffat is going to be done. He's going to do his last, hurrah, say goodbye to the series, say goodbye to the show, and they want to give it full justice. So in order to do that, apparently that means they can't show it this year. And one of the reasons that was given was because there's other important stuff happening and airing on television that could potentially distract people from the awesome that would be Stephen Moffat's final season of Doctor Who. Because that makes all the sense in the world. But the things that they're talking about are the Olympics and the Euros. Now, I have to be honest, as an American, I had no idea what the heck the Euros were. I had to Google, and first I got that it's money, and I know that's not what they're talking about. So I had to Google more and realize that you would call it football, or those of us over here would call it soccer. So it's this ginormous soccer game that apparently takes place every 4 years, or soccer tournament. It's a soccer thing. It's the sports ball. So they're delaying it for the Olympics and for sports ball. We won't have Doctor Who for an entire year, more than a year technically, because it's only January and spring is most definitely not January. Spring is March or April, or, it's New Hampshire, May, depending on the season. So I'm very sad that we're having a real delay before we get new episodes. I always feel like it's sort of the death sounding of the end of things for a series when they start stretching out the time between when the last of one season airs and when the beginning of the next season airs. That's what's happening here. I mean, we're looking at a really long delay. And what happens is, not like everyone's going to start hating on Doctor Who, but it sort of loses its momentum. And this past season was really good. It made up for a season before that wasn't so hot, but between those two seasons, a lot of people walked away from the show and a lot of people don't want to come back. They got some people back because the season was better, but now they're going to go and make us wait for more than a year, which means more people are going to find other things to watch, other things to spend their time on, other things to fangirl about. And there's great potential for Doctor Who to lose even more viewership. So this makes me sad for a lot of reasons. One, because I don't want to have to wait over a year to get more episodes, save the Christmas episode if they actually do give us one. And second, because I fear that it's really a bad move for the show. I know they'll be introducing new people, new showrunners, but I think when you wait that long, you run the risk that you lose people, and I'm really concerned. I'm curious what you guys think out there that are Doctor Who fans. Do you think that this is a bad thing? Do you think it'll be a good thing? Tell me what you think, because I'm a little concerned that Doctor Who's days might be numbered.
Hey, and now it's time to talk about our friends at Geek Nation Tours.
Geek Nation Tours!
Exactly. No better way to travel across the USA and around the whole world. See what I did there? A little rhyme action.
Oh, look at that.
Speaking of traveling the USA, Craig,
Yep.
Gen Con, it feels like only yesterday, but we are right in the middle.
It does.
The next Gen Con is now closer than the last one is farther away.
Is it 7 months
there.
away?
Getting there.
It's almost 8 months away.
Okay, fine. But
Which
still,
technically is more than the
Too
4.
soon
Anyway,
start thinking about
math
that.
being difficult,
Math
we'll
is
just move
hard.
on.
But it is getting closer. So, Craig, if you wanted to go see Gen Con through Geek Nation Tours, and there really is no better way to do it.
No, well,
expect?
think about it. You're getting all the cool stuff that's happening at Gen Con, but you're getting, not only is Terrace going to be there to guide you, and he's been there a bunch now, he's going to point out the coolest stuff. He's going to help you sign up for the coolest stuff. You're going to get these dinners where you're going to meet game designers. You may or may not meet some awesome podcasters. I don't know. We actually are in the process of trying to come up with a way that Russ and I are going to be GMing like a Dungeons and Dragons adventure. Of course, the theme this year is dungeon crawling, which is Russ's bailiwick.
Oh, yes.
So the whole trip is going to have that theme. It's just it's a great way to experience anything. But Gen Con, it's huge. It can be really intimidating, and in this way, everything's kind of opened up for you.
Exactly right. So head on over to, and there's so many other tours too. So head on over to geeknationtours.com and check out all the hot.
Yep.
I'm Rafe Hollywood Granger, and this is the Hollywood Minute.
Good morning, Hollywood peeps. Good morning. I'm Rafe Hollywood Granger, recording episode 182 Hollywood Minute and the second video of it. So a little bit more going on since we last recorded, and let's see, it's a nice chilly day here in northern New England, New Hampshire. It's about 6:15 a.m. as I continue to wake up early. That's been working pretty well. If you want to see, if you gamers are interested in that, I did a how to get up early little video. So because I've been working on that, just get a few more hours in my day. As it stands right now, I'm about 48 hours late on the recording of my Hollywood Minute because I got a little swamped over the weekend. Nothing big, just my folks got into town, and then Monday was a super busy day. So hopefully I can squeak this under the wire with Russ and Craig's indulgence of waiting. Let's talk about Fallout. So Felicia Day sent this tweet out. It's hilarious. She's talking about how playing Fallout 4 and going on the side quests. It's like the IKEA of side quests and getting lost. And I couldn't agree with her more. I mean, it's such a huge game that for a gamer like me who likes something a little bit more on rails, I get completely lost sometimes and bored because I want to finish the storyline, but you're not high enough level yet. So you can't finish the main storyline, and then I'm going off on these side quests, and I do feel like I'm just wasting my time because I've got other stuff to do. So I'm like, come on. It gets a little frustrating, but what I did was I just forced it. I just kept doing the main quest, even if it meant I had to run through some areas that I couldn't handle in the game because they were killing me, and just kept saving just to advance the story quest, and that seemed to work. On the one hand, I think it's a bad idea because I feel bad because I feel like I'm wasting the game. Like there's this beautiful world to go see, and all I'm doing is like firing down here. But otherwise, I don't know if you're like me. I won't finish the game, and then I'll have this half-played fake game. So I don't want to do that. But it's fun. I'm still enjoying it. Game night. I'm having a crisis of faith with game night. Right now, we play D&D the first Tuesdays of the month, and we play that at Andy's house, and that's just great. I look forward to that so much. And then the second Tuesday of the month, I go to my, I don't know if you can see here, my BNI regional team meeting, and that's in Manchester. And I enjoy that, but that takes me to, the meeting gets out about 6, and so I don't get to game night till around 6:30, and then by then, you're sort of out of the loop. Everybody's already got their plans all nailed down, and so then I start to go, do I go or do I not go? And then also what happens is because I've been getting up so early, I start to get tired at around 9 or 10, and I have an hour drive from where game night is in Manchester to my house in Northampton on the seacoast. So I start to debate that. And then the first Tuesday of the month, which I haven't been able to go to, is the Star Wars Artillery campaign. I'm really dying to go back to that. But the way my life's been falling or things have been happening, I haven't been able to make it. Like last Thursday, my daughter got to play in a game. She's 8, and she got to play at the varsity game at the halftime. That's like a little expose of the little kids. And I just really wanted to see that, of course. So that brings us to this Tuesday. But I have to admit, if I'm being honest, I'm not 100% fan of our new location with Millie's Tavern. I get it why a lot of people like it. I guess I've realized that I like your more traditional game store. So I think for me, the lighting's not good. The tables aren't good. I always feel like I'm shoehorning myself into this location. I just don't feel at home there. The people at Millie's are great. They're super nice. It's not the people. I think it's the lighting and the tables. The tables are those bar tables, and there's the bar stands, and they're rickety. And I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. But that's where my game group is now. I don't want to do that thing where I took a hiatus over the summer and then I felt out of sync with my friends. So I'll admit, folks, I'm at a real game crisis there. And I definitely know that if I don't go and hang out with the friends, then I miss them, and I miss it for myself. I don't get that piece for me, and I'm a little more irritable with things. So So it's game night tonight, and I'm debating what to do. I'm thinking about maybe trying to do Portsmouth night, maybe take the pressure off. See my friends the first half, and then maybe maybe keep a floater night for myself to maybe not go to game night per se, or maybe I'll go. What I'm thinking about doing tonight is just going, but not worrying about playing a game. Just going and socializing, and then I don't have to worry about the lighting and the tables that I don't like. So anyway, I always promised I'd be honest with you. I don't mean to bore you with my inner thoughts of game night, but I almost didn't want to share it with you because it feels embarrassed. Is that the right word? I don't know. But I always promised to be honest with you. So that's what I'm thinking about. Also thinking about this, my dad was here and he was showing me his pictures of Normandy when they were visiting. And we were looking through my Flames of War books. We had some question about the different beaches, and the Flames of War books have a lot of historical information in them. And so I was like, oh, I so miss playing Flames of War. I know me, Andy, Stino, and Matt, we didn't get a chance to play our annual D-Day battle. Andy moved, so we used that as an excuse not to play. And all four of us, and I know Adam wants to play too. He wants to play his British that he bought. So that really struck a fire in me. I want to get that sort of scheduled and on the books. Also on that note, I'm looking to sell my Vietnam Flames of War army. I have both sides painted. I have the Americans painted, 101st, and I have the Viet Cong painted along with all the helicopters. So I'm looking to sell that for two reasons. One is we have a trip coming up to Disney, and I am a Dave Ramsey follower, and so we don't finance it on credit. And I'm a little bit shy on our cash goals for that, so I'm going to sell it to go into the trip fund. And also, if I'm being honest, it's not getting played, and I'm not a collector. I like to have my things be used, and so if I don't start to use something in about a year, and I think this is 2-3 years, and I keep telling myself I'm going to play with Matt, but it's never happening. So I think it's time to sell it and let A, somebody else enjoy it, and B, I'll realize the cash for it. So I'll let you guys know when I get that up and out on eBay. So anyway, thanks for listening. Again, I'm Rafe Hollywood Granger. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can follow me on the D6G Hollywood on Twitter. I think I misspoke last time. If you want to follow me in my work, I'm doing a lot of little videos on my work world where I'm coaching entrepreneurs and talking about law, giving little vignettes on law. If you want to follow me on that, that's on Rafe Granger on Twitter. All right, until next time, happy gaming.
Hey, welcome back, and now it is time to put on our coonskin caps and get on our horses and ride out west. It's time to talk about the game, the legend, if you will, Legends of the American Frontier.
Yeehaw!
I have Dan here. I'll keep us straight because this game is like brandy new, we played the production copy, right, Dan?
Yes, we played advanced airshipped copy of the actual production copy.
Yes, and when is this game? So this is something that was done on Kickstarter, right? And Game Salute is publishing it, and it's coming out. Is it shipping by the time they hear this? This show is going to be live at the end of the month. Is by the time they hear this, or is it really going to be February?
It is on a boat coming from China right now. Yeah. So the variability of that being what it is, I would say it's probably going to ship to backers in February, and then released to retail probably in February or early March.
Cool. So about a month out. So by the time you hear this, give it a month. You'll start seeing it on store shelves and around the world, and your friends who backed it will have their copy. Dan, who designed this game?
Designed by the inestimable Richard Launius.
Yes. And a little trivia. So the artwork in this game, the majority of the artwork is done by a friend of the show, Dan May. And you may know Dan from such works as our logo.
Or pretty much any artwork for our show.
Yes, pretty much any artwork. Dan's a fantastic artist, and you really get to see his range with this game. So let's talk about the theme for this game for a minute and sort of the idea, the concept of it, because this game is right up my alley. And when Dan was like, hey, if you guys want to play a copy of this game, come on, like, oh my god, this is my game, because it's all about the early days of settling of the West in America. And so Dan, what's the high level sort of theme here we're talking about?
Sure. So Legends of the American Frontier is about just that. You're at the starts of America, and you are going to become the legends. And so you play through an entire lifetime, really, of these characters. That's how it's designed. So you start off the game by talking about your upbringing, how you were raised, and you start with a few cards to sort of give you your background until you're like a teenager, maybe early 20s. And then you start building from there. As you play the game, you gain little bits of your story as you go on quests and you go on adventures and you explore and you do things in your life. And so by the end of the game, you're going to have this whole long sort of tableau of cards that is all your different adventures that you went on. So that's really what it is. It's sort of a frontier, a rollicking frontier, it's not, somebody called it a storytelling game the other day. It's not really a storytelling game. It's more of an adventuring game. That's how I think of it. But it has a very strong narrative edge. You definitely feel like you're building your own character.
Yeah, it's definitely, from a core mechanics point of view, it's a card driven victory point game. But what you're really doing is you're building up the history of your characters. That's the theme. It's set in the early days of America, the U.S. And what's really interesting about it is there is this little RPG element to it where you're actually building a character and building a history and building a story, and you feel like that, right, Craig?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I get why people would say it's a storytelling game because I think at its core, maybe on the surface, it has all that. But like you said, Russ, it's there are victory points. You're trying to put together your combos so that you are going to win. And the story, I think the cool thing, the sort of the magic that happens with the game is that the story happens incidental to you trying to win the game.
Right.
So you're trying to win the game, and in the pursuit of those successes that are going to get you the points to win the game, it's building up the timeline of your character's life in a way that you could just read the cards at the end of the game and it tells a story. I thought it was really cool the way it did that.
So let's get into this. So in the box, Craig, what does it sound like when you open a box set in the Legends of the American Frontier? Nice. Very good. So you open that on up, and the box is chock full of stuff, actually, here. So Dan, by the way, we should have checked. What was the suggested retail price on...
This is a deluxe edition that was out through the Kickstarter, so this is a $75 retail. It's a big, hefty box.
Well, let's talk about what's inside this thing and see if we think it's worth it. So you get this trifold game board, and it's a small board. It's one of those little mini boards in the middle. It's really designed to handle the cards that are being played, but it's nice. It looks great, and I don't think you can overstate how beautiful the artwork in this.
No, the artwork is fantastic.
Wow, really, really good. And we're not just saying that because we love the artist. I kept looking at the pictures, going, "Wow." You get these. Yeah, is it 10 character boards, Dan, or 8 character boards?
There are 10 due to stretch goals in the campaign.
Yeah, so there's 10. So you get these really large, heavy cardboard character boards, and each of these boards is the character you're going to be playing. Now, there's sort of some cool artwork of the character, and there are different sort of archetypes from the time period. So you've got sort of the distinguished politician. You've got the Davy Crockett-looking coonskin cap, sort of adventurer, frontiersman. You've got the Native American. You've got a bunch of other folks there, and each of these folks have 6 dials on there, Dan, for 6 different skills.
6 dials.
6 dials that snap into place. Not unlike some of the stuff that Fantasy Flight's done, and you can dial these up for the different stats. And what's going to be cool is as you build your past, that's going to set your starting dials, and then as you proceed through your life, your skills will grow and change. And these skills are things like your marksmanship, or your ability as a frontiersman, or your politics skill, or maybe your skill with capitalism in these different areas. And there's going to be different challenges throughout the game, and how strong you are in these different skills is going to dictate which of the challenges you think you can overcome, right? Then you get these 104 skill cards, and more about those in a bit. You get 72 of these upbringing and action cards, and you get lots of cards. We'll talk about the cards we get.
Oh, Russ, you missed a trick.
What's that?
Graphic design credit. Dan May shares it with Cody Jones.
Oh yeah, Cody Jones.
That's right.
That's right.
And we should give credit to Nate Furman, who did some illustrations for the game as well, and to David Wright, who did the covers.
Yeah, again, the layout of the game, the artwork, and the graphic design is all very, very good. Actually, it's easy to tell what's going on. So you got all these wheels. What's really another great component to this is if you look at the normal component list, you don't see this here because it looks like it's a lot of tokens. There are a lot of cool tokens, but there's these metal look like sheriff's badges. Dan, what are those?
So those are the True Grit tokens, and this was that's why I said it's a deluxe edition. Is actually, if you look it up on like BGG, you'll see that there's the Legends of the American Frontier, and then there's the True Grit expansion. So this release that's coming out, actually, we put everything into one big box. So this has the True Grit expansion built in, and that includes those metal tokens. And those are basically like things that you'll use to equivalent of re-roll during the game, sort of prevent bad things. But they turned out really nice.
The metal's awesome on this.
They're beautiful.
So, and then you also get this nice rule book that is, again, beautifully printed, great fonts, very thematic, beautiful artwork all the way through it. That explains, of course, how to play the game along with the reference card. Craig, what do you think about the value here for $75?
Well, at $75, if you think the heavy metal tokens with it, 10 character cards, and we should say the character cards, the character boards that you get, they're all pretty much the same, except that every character has one special rule that's going to give you a slight advantage over the course of the game. I didn't notice any of them being really like game breaking or like, oh, you're going to be fighting over that character. But they have like a cool little blurb about where they come from that starts their adventure and pretty much that one special rule. But you have 10 of them, so you've got a lot of cool replayability there. You've got a lot of cards. The True Grit die I wish we had used, because that would have I would have helped on a couple more of those group things, I think, if there was been that chance of getting a little reward. So that's just so that you've got lots of little cool mini expansions, as Dan said. So I think $75 sounds about right for everything that you're getting in the game, and the quality, like the card, the boards are really nice quality as well.
I agree. I think what I really like about it is the amount of art, because the art's fantastic. And if you think of that much art on these cards and what you normally pay for a pure card game for that kind of art, I think you're in that ballpark. And then you add in there the cool metal bits. You add in there the awesome, card stock with the dials. You add all the tokens. You really, I think it's a fair price for a board game of this much caliber. My only slight tweak in it, and Dan and I were playing, I talked about this. Some of the cards are a little thinner than I would like, so they over time they'll flatten out, but they kind of warp a little bit. So I'd love to see a little bit of that fix, but it's almost like you don't even care because the artwork's so good. But that's my only slight nitpick about that.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, and I actually said after our play, I sent a note off to the factory on that just to double check on the card stocks. But what I noticed is that I didn't notice that they were wearing, like it didn't seem like they were, bad card stock or something, which sometimes happens in production. It just seemed like they weren't quite the stiffness that we want.
Yeah,
I
would say that's right. They didn't feel cheap. They're just so thin they kind of warp just from the moisture in the air. So it's kind of like,
well, Russ, back in the day in the Frontier, they didn't quite have the same paper technology we have now.
Yeah, you're going for authentic time period. I get it.
Yeah.
Craig, do you know the story behind the True Grit die? Why that exists?
No, I do not.
So Richard is known for dice games, right? Arkham Horror, etc. And so he said, this is going to be the only game where I don't have any dice. This is one of my only games where I have no dice. And then over the course of the campaign, we were like, oh, we need more stretch goals. We need more stuff. And so we're like, all right, what if we just do just one die? And so that's where the True Grit die came from.
That's funny.
Very nice. Well, I think it's a great idea because we'll talk more when we talk about the different adventures that you can go on, but I think it's a great addition.
All right. So setting up the game is not too complicated, but there's this extra stage of gameplay in the beginning. But basically what you're going to essentially do is divide all the decks of cards out by their various matching backs and kind of shuffle them all up and get them all ready. Lay the board out. Divide the tokens up and pick your character boards. And then you're pretty much at this point ready to start. But there is sort of a pregame to the main game, and that is, of course, the upbringing stage, right? And the upbringing stage is where you're going to set up the initial sort of backstory of your character before he or she starts. Yep. So after picking your boards, there's all these backstory cards, a big old deck of them. You're going to shuffle these up, and you're going to deal each player, I believe, 5 cards, right, Dan? So
yes, I believe that's right, except for one of the characters gets a bonus one.
Right, and we're going to do some drafting. So you deal out these 5 cards. Then each player looks at the cards they get, and these are some crazy cards, right? So they're sort of the things that happen to you as a child or young adult. So, Craig, do you remember an example of one of these cards you got?
Yes, I had one. Well, they're all going to give bonus. They're going to This is how your skill dials are going to set, and how you're going to end up with your original starting numbers. So they all have either rewards that they give you or numbers that you can add to your dials to set at the beginning of the game, and they all have cool little story elements like. You are the son of a God-fearing man, so your spirituality goes up 3, or you were educated at Harvard, so your book learning goes up by 4. So it builds your story, and it basically creates your character.
Exactly.
And yes, there is a card that says "Killed a bear when I was only 5 years old."
Right, 3. Killed him a bear when he was only 3. But yeah, so yeah, the cards. These cards are really cool. On the side, printed horizontally, is sort of like the story text of it. So I killed a bear when I was 5 or whatever. And then in the middle is sort of a little bit of a longer description of it that you could read aloud. Was attacked by a bear when I was 5 years old and managed to escape it, and it fell down a pit or something. And then underneath there, it'll say like what the effect is. So it adds your frontier skill. It starts at 5 or something. You also can gain. There's also a resource. There's different kinds of resources in the game, and these are represented by tokens. So some of the cards give you starting resources. Some of these cards set your skill dials. And this is a drafting part of the game. So I'm going to get 5 cards. I'm going to pick one of these cards that I think is cool. Oftentimes, players are compelled to pick cards that sort of match the artwork of their character. So I was kind of looking for. I was playing Daniel, who looks like Davy Crockett on the card. So I'm here looking for things that are all like Frontiersy or guns play or whatever. You pick these things. I pick one. I pass my hand to Craig. Dan passes me his hand. I pick another card, and we keep going around until each of us has drafted 4 cards, right? And there is one character that gets to pick an extra skill from the discard pile, right? So you get that set up. And that's sort of what's cool is when you lay these cards down in front of you and you align the edges just right, you can read those little edges quickly and see basically your story, like sort of the highlights of your childhood, if you will, right?
Right. Yep.
So that's pretty cool. So already you've kind of got ownership of this character, right? He's unique. So just because you picked the frontiersman, you've picked skills that could be weird. Like you could pick a frontiersman, but maybe he's really, really good at book learning. You can do whatever you want, or religion, or whatever. So that's pretty interesting. What'd you think?
And
of that?
because it's a draft, you're getting your good cards early, and so you have to kind of flesh it out. So everybody's starting out at roughly an equal footing, I think.
Right. Now, that's the upbringing stage, and once that stage is done, we're pretty much ready to start playing the game, and what's called the and that's broken down into 2 big phases, really: the adventuring stage, and which breaks down into the sunrise, daytime, and evening phase, and then there is the legend phase and the final scoring phase. But let's go to the adventure phase. This is where the main part of the game really happens. So, on that game board I told you about, there's really 3 big sections, and these represent sort of the 3 big areas of the country. There's back east, which is, of course, the big city living. There's what's the middle part called? The frontier? And then the far west, right?
Yeah.
So kind of like the frontier, and then the places that's no one's in there yet, the far west. And each of these sections sort of laid out the same way. There's a little artwork there to kind of give you the feeling of it. But there's there's a spot for one card to be put in 3 different positions for each of these areas. And there are decks of cards for these different areas. And we're going to draw one card randomly and put it face up in each of these regions to show us that there's an adventure to go on back east, there's an adventure to go on in the frontier, and there is an adventure to go on in the far west, right?
Yep.
Now, some characters have, Craig mentioned each character has a special skill. Some characters' special skills pertain to different areas of the country. So, Craig, I think yours was all about the far west and the frontier.
And
right?
the frontier, yeah. Well, we could also talk about the fate wheels.
Yes.
So there are these they're wagon wheels, and on the backs of them, they have sort of modifiers to the adventure that you'll be going on. Sometimes they're good. Usually they're bad. They'll make it harder, or they'll add additional negatives to failure, things like that. In the back east, it's automatically revealed. So that card at the lowest of those 3 tiers, as soon as that you see that card, you also know what the modifier is. In the frontier, it only becomes clear when that card moves into the second phase. So everybody has to have either failed at that adventure or passed on it the first turn it was available. Then it moves up on that track, and the wheel is revealed for that. And then in the far west, it actually has to have been passed by or failed 3 times, so 3 turns, and then it's revealed. And if you go on an adventure before it's revealed, you commit to the adventure, then it gets revealed.
Right. So the longer you wait, the more you know about the troubles you might face.
Exactly. And my ability was only in the frontier in the far west, I was able to replace the fate wheel with a new wheel randomly generated, which I did several times.
So during the sunrise phase, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that every player has those 7 skill cards. So these get dealt out, and most players are going to have 7 cards at most times. So you get 7 of these cards. Now, we'll come back to those cards in a second. Then we're also going to go ahead and set up the board to have 1 adventure in each of the 3 regions, and as Craig described, one of these fate wheels in each of the 3 regions as well. And in one of the regions, the far east or the back east, we will know what the fate wheel's impact is on the adventure. And so these adventure cards are telling you things like, become a presidential candidate, or be nominated for president or whatever. And it'll say like it takes either personality of 14 or book learning of 14 as well, right?
Yeah, the number's always going to be the
so
same.
There's icons in these cards that tell you that. So basically what that's telling you is you need to be able to get to a total with your skill cards and other bonuses we'll get to in a second that equal or exceed that number in that particular type of skill. Or you can think of those as suits of cards, if you will, also, right?
Yeah.
So, and the different skills. So one of them might be, found the first homestead. And if you can have a frontier skill of 14, you can do that, or, that kind of thing, right? Now we've got our skill cards, and our skill cards are going to tell us what kind of things we can play to help try to beat those scores we need to complete the adventures. And we're also going to be able to look at our characters' sheets and see that I've got my Frontiers dial is set to 5. And if I'm looking at my hand and I say I've got some Frontier cards that also have high numbers on them, I might have a good chance of hitting that 14 I need to build a homestead, right? And when I get the other thing on these adventure cards is the rewards you get for these adventure cards. Now, in the corner, there's the victory points it's worth, and that's the primary reason you do some of this stuff. But there are also other rewards, including increasing your skills, including getting some resources that you can spend to buy other things. And there's also can be hazard cards you get as well, which actually damage your character and make things trickier, right?
Hardship.
Yeah, hardship. Making sense so far? Dan, am I getting it covered here pretty well?
Yeah, I think one thing that would be helpful for folks is to understand that your skills can range from 0, your innate skills of like how diplomatic I am or whatever, can go from 0 to 7.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about a 15 on a solo adventure, that means you need to get +8. The range on the skill cards is from 1 to 8. Right. That's the core that you're going to get. So when you get to some of these big group adventures where it's like 50, 60, you really have to have a bunch of people together. So those numbers, that range is important to know. So your core skills could be 0 to 7, and the range that's going to be on the skill cards is 1 to 8.
Right.
Yep.
So now we've got the board set up. We're all looking at it. We all see what the adventures could be. We've got our hand of cards. And now it's time to go into the daytime phase where each player commits to what part of the country they're going to go to indicate which adventure they're going to do. So each player has their own little mini deck of essentially action cards. And these cards, they're all the same for each player. There's different artwork on them indicating their character. And so one says back east, one says frontier, and one says far west. And the fourth possible option is to rest. So we're all going to lock in face down where we're going to go. And this is the part of the game we start talking. So as Dan hinted, some of these adventures are for one player, and some of these adventures are for groups. Now, if you go on a one-player adventure, you each try to solve the adventure individually, and the player with the highest total score that also succeeds gets that card. Everybody else gets bupkis. If you go on the group adventure, then you'll notice on the group adventure card, there are bonuses for who has the highest score, the second highest score, and the third highest score sometimes. It depends on the adventure. Some are only 2, some are 3. And so you can see how much you're going to get for at least contributing to the victory there as well. But only the highest player gets the actual group card. So some negotiations happen here. So if there's a group adventure going on, you have to try to convince the rest of the table, hey, everybody, I'm going to go try to help establish the Underground Railroad. It's going to require a personality of 40. I can contribute, and you're just talking now, you're not actually proving what you're doing. I can contribute 20. Anybody else want to do this with me and see if we can solve that, that adventure? And so people will say yes, no, maybe so. Yeah, sure. I'll help you out. I won't. But then we all lock the cards in face down and we flip them over.
that's going to tell what we're actually doing, right? So I may have told Craig I'm going to go help him with the Underground Railroad, but really I've gone out west and I'm trying to find some gold, right?
Or as another example, some people may have told you that they're going to help you save New Orleans from burning down, and then everybody else decides to go somewhere else, and you're the only one fighting the entire fire.
Yes, I don't know what you're talking about.
Just saying. No offense, just saying.
No offense, just saying. So that already adds a really fun component to the game. And once you've played a round or two and figured out how the cards work, that really gets actually pretty hilarious. And it had a lot of laugh out loud moments for us when we were playing along there. So you flip these cards over. Now we know where everybody's going. And now we're going to start resolving the different regions of the board, going from the back east through the frontier and then finally the far west. So we look and see how many people went back east. And so if just one player went there, then that one player is going to go ahead and try his luck at solving that skill, at solving that adventure. And how this works is, first they're going to play some cards. Now, this is the part where the game gets tricky. So there's all these different, essentially, what I'm going to describe as suits of cards. And they basically are, they've got a big number on them. They don't look like a playing cards. They have cool art on them. But basically, there's a big number in the middle. And there's an icon in the corner that indicates the type of suit it is. So if this is a personality test, you're looking for primarily cards that have the personality icon in the corner. The interesting thing is, if the number is 4 or below, then you can play more than one card from your hand for 4 or below. So if you've got 2 4s and a 3, all with a personality icon, I can play all 3 of those cards for a total of 11, right?
Yep.
Did I do my math right there? Yes, 11. However, if the card is a higher than a 4, so I might have an 8 in my hand with the personality icon, I can only play that card. So that's just one fundamental rule. The other thing is there are some other suits that can be wild, and these wild suits can be added in if you want to. So you got to watch for that as well. So there are some fancy rules there, but basically what you're going into is you can play one card if it's 5 or above, or as many cards as you want as long as they're all below 4. But the tricky bit here is they have to match the icons on the adventure you're trying to solve. Right? Yep. So you play that card. Let's say I played an 8. Then you can add your skill in from your player board that matches the icon. So if you've also got a personality of 3, I can add that in there. Now I'm at 11. And then you get a free flip from the skill deck, right? So you take a card off there, you flip it, and you add it to your total no matter what its suit is. Mm-hmm. But if its suit matches the skill you're trying to do, you get to flip another card.
Yeah, and now comes the true grit.
Now it's fun. So, and the cool part is
now
it's kind of like
fun. It wasn't fun until then, Dan.
It's kind of like exploding dice. It's really happening
but with
here
cards.
With cards, right? So you're
exploding cards.
Exploding cards, right? So you're hoping that these cards come out to match your suit to take your number really high, and you get very lucky. Like we've seen number flips keep going, where all of a sudden you're at 30 points by yourself, right? So that can happen, and it's like, and then it's almost like a stand-up die roll. The whole table's like, whoa, he's still going! Oh my god! And this is where,
like if you go to New Orleans and you're the only one that's fighting the fire, and then you almost get it,
right?
But not quite.
And this is where those little metal tokens come in, because one of the rules is if you have these true grit tokens, and you get these from solving adventures, starting the game with certain history and all kinds of things.
Or resting.
You can spend these tokens, and then if you get a card flip you don't like, you can throw that away and reflip the card. Yeah. So going into an adventure with a high card plus a high skill plus a few reflips give you pretty good odds of maybe doing all right here, right? And again, depending on the goal as well.
Yeah. And if you're on a group adventure, you can pool those. So you can be like, oh, you've got 2 true grit, and I've got 2 true grit. So we got 4 reflips if we need.
So on an individual adventure, what would happen would be Dan would do all of everything I described by himself. And if he was the only player there, he would compare it to the total. If he equals or exceeds the goal, he has won the adventure. He gets the card. He gets all the rewards listed on the card. And ta-da, he did it. If there are 2 or more, if he fails, there's also an icon on the bottom of the card that indicates what kind of bad things happen, and these are usually hardship cards. And there's both a sort of a general hardship card, but there's also things that impact your different skill types, and so there's different cards you can draw for that as well, right? So you can get very specific, which is kind of cool. And some of these things become lifelong problems that you have. That
they become part of your timeline.
They become part of your story, like a debilitating injury, or I became a ruthless cattle baron, which was a -1 victory point, but it was kind of cool in my story. I'm like, well, sometimes
I'm still confused on how that's a bad thing.
Sometimes in life, you got to become a ruthless cattle baron. I mean, it's just something you got to do.
And any game where you can become a ruthless cattle baron is a win.
It is a good game. And it goes right in your timeline. So as you're getting, and what's cool is as you get these adventure cards, on the side is more of that story. So,
elected to Congress, when he was 32 or whatever. So you put that in your timeline, and now you have all the things you started from the pregame, plus you have elected to Congress, plus you have Ruthless Cattle Baron, and all of a sudden you're building this profile, and you can't help but start role-playing and going along with the fact. And one of the things that was hilarious...
Well, some people might be able to help, but you can't.
What was really pretty funny was that things start to happen in the game that actually make the whole game start to tell a story. So if you are on the adventure with someone else...
But it's not a group adventure. You both play all your cards individually like you're doing the adventure by yourselves. Then you compare to see who had the highest total. So the goal was 14, and I got a 16, and Craig got a 15. We have both successfully completed the adventure. Might have happened once
So
or
nobody
twice.
takes any penalties, but only the guy with the highest score gets the card. So it's kind of like both people did it, but only one person became famous for it. Right. And Craig was playing a Native American, and I'm playing Davy Crockett. And over again, he and I ended up on the same adventures because both of us had similar skill profiles. Yeah. And almost every time, I beat him up by like 1 or 2 fame points.
It was ridiculous.
So we started joking that I was always doing adventures.
We did not start joking.
With my good friend Tonto. But Tonto was never known as well as the Lone Ranger, right? So it's kind of cool.
Yes.
I thought that was hilarious.
I'm sure you did.
But that's what happens now. In the group adventures, as Dan pointed out, everybody adds up the total cards they played. You only do one main flip, following all the flipping rules I described earlier. And then that overall total by the group has to beat the number to succeed in the adventure as a group. And then the player who contributed the most counts as first place, second gets second, and there's rewards in the card for those different categories.
Right. And some of those cards only have rewards for like the first 2 places or the first 3 places. And that's where that true grit die we were talking about comes in. If you help out, but you don't contribute enough to get one of those primary rewards, you can roll the die, and it's never anything bad, right, Dan? It's just either nothing or some minor good thing.
Yeah, I think it's just mostly good because you have to spend a token to do it, right?
Do you? I thought you just... you might have.
I think you have to spend a token for it.
Oh, never mind.
But in any case, so it's risky to help, but you can be convinced to help out by other people, and they can negotiate for things too. But I really liked... So that's the core of the game. Now, the fourth thing you can do, so remember you have 4 action cards. 3 of them correspond to 3 different areas of the board. So you're indicating I'm going back east to the frontier, whatever. But the 4th card is to rest. Now, after everybody's done the different adventures in different areas, anybody who rested gets to do their rest action. And resting basically means you can either draw 4 skill cards, and you don't discard down to your hand limit until the end of the whole round. So this allows you to have skill cards for different things, to optimize your hand, try to build for certain things you want to get. Or you can take a True Grit token. Those are the metal tokens we talked about earlier, and those are very powerful because you can do redraws with those.
Yeah.
And resting also allows you to trade your resource tokens. You can trade 2 to 1 and trade for different resources, which are important because we didn't describe this. Below the board, there are decks of cards for different major areas. So there's one for love. There's one for liberty. What's the other ones, Dan? I think it's love, liberty. I'm trying to remember the other 2 categories.
Fame,
right.
It's happiness, fame. Happiness,
fame. I can't remember. But basically, what's kind of cool about this is,
I believe there's 4.
Yeah. 5 of them.
Liberty.
Maybe?
I forget.
There's 4 or 5.
No, there were 5 decks in there total. One was the hardship deck. Then there was happiness. Then there was fame. Then there was financial. There was the financial one with the little stacks of gold. And then there was liberty or statesmanship.
So what's really cool about this is, as you complete adventures, you get these resources, and they kind of match. So, like, being the first person to set up the first settlement, you get a fame token, right? You can then spend, if you collect enough fame tokens, you can spend them for fame cards, which become permanent parts of your story. And they can be things like, if you did a lot of happiness ones, you could marry your childhood sweetheart. And that gives you a game effect, victory points, etc. Or, and they also give you powers in the game. Like Dan had one that allowed him to trade certain kinds of resources for other resources easier. So really cool stuff there as well. So you're basically building your character's history based on the adventures you complete and the way you spend your liberty, your statesmanship, and all the other things to get that stuff, right?
Right.
So that's really cool. Now, the game ends when either 2 of those resource decks go away or
one of the adventure
decks expires. And what's really cool is you can control game length this way because there's different variants of the game that tell you the starting number of cards in each of these decks.
Right.
Yeah, so you'll normally start, it's between 5 and 8, and that's a short game to long game. I think you start with 8 normally, and you can go longer than that if you want. We played the epic version, so we basically played with everything. So we played with 12 cards.
Played the epic version.
Yeah, so we played with there's 12 cards of each deck. So if you did that, and I think we actually ran out of the happiness cards and that sort of stuff down at the bottom.
So that's the sunrise phase. The daytime phase is doing all the adventures, doing your resting. And then in the evening phase, you basically just go ahead and reset everything. So you're going to, any adventures that were solved, then new adventures get dealt into those spots. If adventures weren't solved, they move up one more tier on the little track there, which indicates maybe it exposes the Wheel of Fate. And by the way, these Wheel of Fates, they impact the adventures in weird ways. They might add 5 to the difficulty level of the adventure, or they might reduce the difficulty of the adventure by 5. They might strip some skills out of your hand. They might add skill cards to your hand. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. You don't really know. And that's why waiting on an adventure that's particularly hard is good, because the longer it stays out there, the more likely you're going to be able to see the fate wheel and see how that's going to impact it, right? So that's pretty much the whole game, and you're really playing along until one of those end conditions happen. One other thing to watch for is, in addition to the victory points and the cards you're going to collect, there are some end game victory points that kick in, and there's a little mini deck of cards that you reference at the end of the game. That
the legend cards.
The legend cards that kick in and give you bonus points if you did anything legendary, right? So the player with the most successful adventures from the Far West gets a legend card. The player who gets the most adventures from the Frontier gets a legend card, and from back east gets a legend card. There's the player with the most of certain kinds of resources gets legend cards, things like that, right?
The happiest for the most of each of those type of reward cards.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and this is all on the summary sheet as well. So keep an eye on that summary sheet if you really want to get into the stuff. But my favorite part of the game is at the end, each player, it's an optional rule, but I think you got to play with this.
Yeah.
Each player dramatically reads their character's story, right? So you go through your little row of cards there, and there's the little short version of everything that happened from those 4 cards you got in the beginning that started your player's life to all the adventures you completed and the hardships that
and it
happened.
only takes 5 minutes for everybody to do it,
So
but
you
it's
go
so
around.
fun because you're reliving the fun moments of the game.
And then you inject those little moments, like Dan, had his card there that said, put the fire out in New Orleans, and then Dan added color to that.
Elaborated.
The second time, after the first time going in and getting blackened because no one assisted him, and I had several of mine were and aided by his unsung sidekick Tonto. So a lot of fun gets in there. It just adds a little more color to the game, and then the players vote at the end for the player who told their story the best, and that player gets an additional 5 victory points. So you can see why purist gamers may not like that, because it's a little bit of a voting rule. But I think it's a lot of fun and adds a lot of color to the game as well. So so that's pretty much the whole game. Do we miss anything major there, Dan?
I'm trying to think. One big thing is number of players. It's 3 to 7 players.
That's a lot of players.
So when you get, the more players you get, if you're playing with 3 players, you actually have an adventure seal. It's like a presidential seal, and it covers up one of the 3 regions each turn. And so you'll only have fewer areas to go to. But as you get more and more players, of course, when you're trying to compete or do group adventures together, sometimes you might need 4 or 5 people to try and go do a 60 or 70 point adventure to make it successful. But then only 3 of those people are going to get prizes depending on the adventure. So just keep in mind that it does play up to that large player count. And that's something that I think is a good highlight of the game. I'm interested to see actually if they can adjust it down to 2. That's something I'm going to be talking to Richard about.
Cool. But I really enjoyed it. I think you guys have a winner here. I think there's a lot going on, and let's get to our final thoughts here. So, Craig.
Yes.
In the style of an unschooled frontiersman trying to make a statement to Congress.
Well, that's bigoted.
Please describe the D6G rating system.
Your honors, this is a fine hall you've got here. Clearly you are learned men, but I come from a harder school. I come from the school of terror and fear, alone in the dark, surrounded by woods and men who would kill you for the boots on your feet. And I will tell you, a man who comes from that background, that man is made of rugged stuff. And when he is looking towards an adventure, you might look to going to your gentleman's club or having a drink, or maybe skipping church is a big adventure to you. But when a man such as myself looks for adventure, we want to find the most adventurous adventure you can adventure. And so we like to rate our adventures based on some sort of sliding scale that might be a little clearer to you because of your learnedness. And so what we're going to do is we're going to rate our adventures on this numerical scale, where a lower number, completely against what you would think, you learned men, a lower number is better. You would think like a higher number, but no, we're going to confuse you. A lower number is better. So, for instance, you're rolling them bones while you're warming yourself by the fire one night. You want to throw a die to figure out whether or not you're going to like something or the adventure's going to be great. The lower the number, the better. The higher the number, the worse. And that, gentlemen, is how a frontier legend rolls.
Well done. Well done. All
See
right,
what I did there at the end?
Why don't we do guests first? So, Dan, I know it's one of the ones you're publishing, but I also know that you can be a very harsh critic of your own work. So what do you think of Frontiers of an American Legend? Legend of American Frontiers. I got that.
Those words in some sort of
Those
order.
words.
Pick an order. Maybe it's time to rename the game. I don't know.
Frontier Legends of the game.
America?
Yeah, no, I really enjoy this. This is one I played back many years ago when Richard had showed it to me, maybe 2011 or something, 2012. And it was with another publisher. And at that time, I was just like, great, when can I buy it? We were just doing interviews with him. It sounds awesome, right? And so we played it, and I loved it. And then when we had the opportunity to actually pick it up to do the publishing, I was really happy about that, obviously. And it's been a long road to get to where we are now, but Dan and the team did a great job on getting this done. I would say the cards from a production standpoint on this first edition, the cards are something that we're going to be looking at. Again, not a major quibble. It's just a minor thing. They're not really bad quality or anything. They just could be a little more stolid. And then I think the other thing is that because it's a deluxe edition, because we rolled the True Grit expansion in there, I think from an accessibility standpoint, it might be a bit of a challenge. People going, oh, that's a little outside my price range. But this is going to be akin to something like Nothing Personal, which was a higher price point game where people really loved it and they jumped into it. So I think with this limited release, if people are really excited about it, jump in and pick it up. Otherwise, if you can play it with somebody that picks it up, I know I'm going to be playing it a bunch more, and I'm hoping that if there's a good reaction to this, that you could actually have a whole series, that you could have Legends of the whatever, right? Legends of the Jade Road or something like that, that has all different elements. So I was really reminded when we played last night of how much I love this narrative structure. This is the type of game that I absolutely love, because it tells a different story every time, but it's not, oh yeah, I have to make up the story myself. There's actually a fun game there, right? It's not just one of these free-form games. So I love the feel of the flip it off the top of the deck and re-roll, or effectively re-roll, right? Reflip. Oh, I'm going to use my True Grit and get it going again. I was having a lot of fun with that. So I really love it. It's one of my favorite games that we publish, and I will tell you that not all the games we publish I like, and I don't think that should be the case. But this is just one that happens to coincide with my personal tastes and something that we were involved with. So yeah, Legends of the American Frontier, I think Richard did a great job with this, and I think that Dan and Cody and the team did a great job of making it an awesome production.
Well, great. What would you rate it, Dan? You gotta go to
I rate it, man.
I'm putting you to the test here. Rate your own game.
Jeez.
If you want to abstain, you can. You can, if you'd like.
I'm trying to decide if it's the highest. One notch down from the highest. So what is that in your reverse
3
engineering
plus.
here?
3 plus would be a very good game. It means that 2/3
but not
of
a
people
2 plus.
A 2
2 plus is the best you can get. A 3 plus would be the next.
2 plus with a reroll is the
bracket.
best you can get.
I'm going to do 3 plus with a reroll.
There you go. Okay. Fair enough.
Okay.
That means 2/3 of people with a reroll will like this game.
So more than 2/3.
Yeah. So I really like this game a lot. So this game is right in my wheelhouse in terms of theme. And what I really like about it is, you know what it reminds me of a bit? And I'm going to say this, and it's going to give everybody the wrong impression, so I want to be careful.
Yes, it is, because I don't understand it at all.
It's not the same mechanics at all. But it reminds
not
me
even remotely.
No, but it reminds me of Founding Fathers, sort of how it looks.
in a way.
Same general time period.
Yeah,
maybe.
and sort of the idea that I'm in
Not even that.
I'm in a period of history I really like. I guess is what it reminds me of. And I love the art. The art. Well, there's two things really. The art makes the game, and I really like the mechanics too. The only thing about the mechanics that I will say is understanding how the cards work. Once you get it, it's simple, but it's very fiddly until you really figure that out. So I would even recommend like reading that part of the book, passing it around so every player gets it, and when you're teaching the game for the first time, actually walk through an example of how you would play cards.
Yeah, you got to do an adventure for everybody so they can see the practical.
It's a little confusing, and at first we were trying to play all. We thought we could play all the cards we wanted for a particular, skill type. But again, if it's above a 4, you can't. That's a little confusing. But you have to see the flips part work and realize how much bonus. Because after the first few adventures happened, and we saw True Grit get played, and we saw how the reflipping works. And everything, all of a sudden, we were like, "Oh, I can hit a 25, even though my skill's only a 3. I just got to get a little lucky. And if I'm sitting on 4 grit, I have a decent chance of doing that, right? And if it's an adventure that has an and, so either to 2 different skills work, now I've got like a 50-50 chance on a flip that's going to match. And all of a sudden, you start to know the decks better. So there's actually a lot of fun there. But really, what I really found myself having fun with was I really got almost more than the victory points. I got obsessed with building the character I wanted to build. Mm-hmm. So it was almost like I was competing with some of these things with Craig, not because it was the best victory points for me, but because I really wanted to be the first homesteader. I really wanted to be.
That was Michael you beat out for, or that beat you out for that. I didn't care much for a homestead.
I really wanted to be the famous sheriff from the far west. Right?
That's the one you took.
I really wanted to be that too. And I'm like, I want to be the sheriff. I want to be the guy, finding the Northwest Passage. I want to be that guy. I'm going to be famous for that. So I was fighting for it as much to make my cool story as much as the victory points, which I thought was really interesting that I got that attached to my character so quickly. So I really enjoyed it. I think this is I'm going to say it's a 3+. Because one thing I also like is I like the variable game length here. I like how easy it is to change your game length. Yeah. So if you want to play a quick game, maybe have a short story of people's lives, you can. And if you really like this kind of stuff and you got some players who really want to sit down and kind of tell a long story, you can do that too. And I think there's a lot of replayability here because I also like how each of the characters, first of all, so Dan made a good point that the first edition, the cards are a little thin. And I'm sure in subsequent editions that'll be fixed. But the advantage of buying the first edition is you're going to have these really cool bonus stuff that may not be available in later editions like the cool metal bits. And also like the 10 characters instead of the original 8. So having 10 different characters and still having all those great cards that extend what that character can be. Even if he played Davy Crockett twice, he wanted the same story twice. So there's really a lot of cool stuff going on there. And I really like it a lot. I'm going to give this game a 3+ straight up. I think you're going to like it. And there's got a lot of nice mechanics in here that are a little different than most games you play.
Yep. Okay, cool.
What do you think, Craig?
Well, I'm going to say this game has a lot of moving parts. There's a lot going on when you're playing this game. And when it gets ticking along, those moving parts take care of themselves. The graphic design is great. The flow makes sense. It's all very intuitive. And so once you get kind of like locked into what's going on, it's really easy to keep everything flowing. The second half of our game, once everybody figured out all the cards and everything, I think we really the game just kind of really smoothly starts telling its story, and it really just kind of gets out of your way of the fun, and then you're just having fun with the game and the stories. You really need to put in a little bit of time, like Russ said, learning the game right up front, though, for that to happen, because it has so many moving parts. And if this happens, and when this happens, this happens. True Grit, I think I went in like we knew basically that there were going to be bonus victory points rewarded at the end. We didn't know what they were rewarded for. And I could have easily asked at any time, and instead I was going on some assumptions I probably didn't even know consciously that I had in my head. So I didn't really know what the True Grit tokens were going to be for going into the game. And even once it was explained to me, I didn't know if should I be hoarding them or... and it turns out you want to spend those, you want to have enough of them to protect yourself from bad stuff, but you want to have enough of them so you can really do some spectacular Russ did it a couple times. I think Michael did it once. I think Dan did it. Well, he did it and he almost single-handedly saved New Orleans. when you're using those True Grit tokens to constantly reflip the fate cards that you're getting, hoping for trump cards that are going to be the same suit that you need to succeed, so that you could just keep adding cards. So I didn't quite get that until I saw the first time Russ did it. I was like, I thought we were all sharing like, oh, Russ, what a fool. He just threw away 3 True Grit tokens. And then I saw that it succeeded. And it's like, wow, oh my God, maybe that's what it's all about. And then it is possible, and it happened to us, that right out of the gate, the very first 3 cards that get flipped were all very high number, very difficult tests. And so right off the bat, we were all looking at things like, oh, I don't know if I can do that, and I might try that. And we didn't really understand the way the cards were working quite yet. The True Grit weren't really getting that yet. And Russ made a comment that I thought was very funny. Like, this is the opposite of a Euro game where there's too many, you want to do so many things, you can't do them all. And in that very first turn, it was like none of us could do anything. So we were kind of like locked out of what we were trying to do. So that can get frustrating a little bit. But you know what? A rest is awesome. And that's what another thing I think that needs to be hammered home is like, rest isn't like you're giving up your turn. Rest of that True Grit token you could take is super important. It gives you the opportunity to buy a reward card. Yeah. You can refresh your hand. I mean, you're always going to be drawing back up to your max hand size.
Point, Craig. I think too. We thought those were impossible because we didn't really know how the flipping mechanics worked well yet. And so I think having played through that once and then knowing True Grit, like, well, I'm going to rest up and I'll get that 4 victory point thing next turn probably, kind of thing.
Right, exactly. But we didn't have, most of us didn't have True Grit at that point.
Right.
So, I mean, and I'm just saying, like, if it looks like that's happening at any time, rest up and prepare for that next turn, because everything's going to change constantly. I really enjoyed it. This is not necessarily in my wheelhouse. I mean, I've enjoyed games of this type in the past, but it's not something I would seek out. And I have to say, I really, really enjoyed myself. I loved that it was not just a storytelling. It's not just like, oh, we're going to take these cards and tell a story and then judge who's the best, because I hate those. And it's not just the victory points, but the fact that it's a victory point game. It's got a sort of that bluff mechanic where you're like, oh yeah, Russ, I'll go. Oh no, even better and topical. No, absolutely, Dan, I'll help you in New Orleans, and then I juke and I go to the far west instead. I loved that aspect of the game. I loved the storytelling. I think I kept saying over and over again. I think so. I would say I'm going to give it a 3+. I'm going to actually give it a +1. If you really like narrative games.
Good point.
Because I think this game is a fantastic narrative game that tells a story, but it's not dependent upon this. The story is happening incidentally to a really fun game that's happening at the same time.
Right.
So I'm going to give it a 3+. But if you like narrative games or you have a sort of narrative bent to your personality, I think it's a +1. So it'd be a 2+ for you.
I think we can safely say that any game that has this sentence in the rule book is fun. Players are not bound to any verbal commitments they may make in the discussion of group adventures.
That's what I'm talking about.
There you go, see?
So there you have it. That is Legends of the American Frontier. Dan, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy game tycoon schedule.
Multiple careers.
Yes, and joining us here on the D6G. If folks want to find out more about what you're up to, where should they go on the internet?
Well, you can follow me on my new Twitter feed, which has like 12 followers, at Tabletop Tycoon with no H. It's not Tycoon, unless you're Russ. Sure, right. Just Tabletop Tycoon. You can email me, Dan at tabletoptycoon.com. You can really email me, Dan, at any of my companies, but that's my primary email. And you can call me if you want. My number's out there on the internet, but most people just drop me an email or follow me on Twitter.
Could we use smoke signals?
You could send me an emissary, perhaps across the
Pony Express.
Maybe a telegram.
Telegraph. Oh, yeah. Yes, either. Those is fine, depending on what century you find yourself in. I am variously available, but definitely love to hear from folks. I do get a little overwhelmed by my communication stuff sometimes, so I think I have something like 411 unread emails right now from the last 5 days. So if don't get mad at me if you don't hear back from me. It's probably just because I haven't read your email yet. But I'd love to hear from folks. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dan, and thanks again, and thanks for filling us in what you're up to, and take care and come back on the show soon.
Will do.
Absolutely. This General Notice is brought to you by all of our fine friends over at Patreon. These are the men and women who very literally keep the lights on and keep the show going from one week to the next and allow us to do what we do. And we are very grateful and thankful to them, the good 1%, for what they do every day. And today I'd like to thank Jeremy Danielson, Ryan Warner, Jahan Kargar, Richard Hickman, and Dragovan. Thanks, guys, for everything you do. Do you ever notice how hard it is to put yourself out there and then not know how things went? We've gone over this a lot over the last 8 years, and right about now, we've discussed it quite a bit more. And early on, it was very difficult to tell how things were going with the podcast. You could tell roughly how many downloads, but you didn't really know whether people were liking it. You got some emails, but that was about it. And the numbers would go up or down depending on what, month to month. But it was kind of hard to tell, and you felt like you were throwing your voice out there and not a lot was coming back. But over time, the numbers keep going up, and you get more and more emails or more and more tweets or more and more Twitter followers. And now we have Patreon, and so as I said, that 1%, because it's about 1.5% of our average listener number who become patrons. And that's nice. And then we can hear from them a lot. There's a forum for them, and they email us on a regular basis also. So it's really nice to have that, and the more of that you get, the more the more justification you have for putting in the effort, and the more satisfied you feel about what you're putting out there. Because ultimately that's why we do what we do. We're not doing it to where nobody's quitting their jobs, and it's nice going to the cons and seeing you guys and stuff like that. And so that's basically why we do what we do. Writing, on the other hand, is something else again. I'm much earlier on in the curve in writing, and short of going to Amazon and reading screeds that have very little to do with me and a lot to do with one of the men involved with the projects, I can't really get a lot of feedback on that. And so writing is difficult to see, kind of like you're throwing it out there and not much is coming back at you. I'm sure a lot of people listening now are like me. They like writing, and they like writing short stories, or they like writing battle reports, or they write adventures for their D&D groups or whatever. And, they give those to their friends, and their friends read them right there, and you can like watch them read them and react. And that's always fun. That's where I come from. I enjoy doing that. I enjoy that feeling of watching my friends read my writing. And so obviously the further sort of up you go, the less of that you get, really. And so now, I have 4 books that are out there available right now. I have 2 in different stages of editing. One is almost done, but one has been in limbo since I finished it in September with no notification of what's happening with it, which is a little scary to me. And so there's of the 6 books that I've written so far, only 4 of them are available. I don't get a lot of feedback at all. I mean, I'm told that the sales are good for a small publisher, which is good, and I keep getting the offers to continue, so I have to assume that that's good. But very seldom are you given an opportunity to really put things out there that you think you're going to be able to gauge how you're doing. And that sort of came about when I did the short story for Extra Life this fall that we published through Winged Hussar. It was very nice to not forfeit, but they paid all of the fees to have that listed. And I thought that was going to be really great because I was going to actually be able to see, like, it's a short story. It's $1. I figured the numbers would be pretty good, and all of the money goes to charity. So maybe it wasn't even my writing, but maybe people wouldn't mind dropping a buck. And I got really excited. Kind of in my head, it wasn't going to be a really valid rubric by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought it was going to be something that I could kind of put in my hat as that worked anyway, and that was a success. And the deadline for fundraising for 2015 Extra Life was, of course, December 31st. So soon after December 31st, Vince and I connected, got together email, and I asked what the information was, and he it was 10. So 10 people downloaded that story with an awesome cover from listener and amazing artist Paul Wingrove, and 10. So that was and I kind of felt like, wow, and it's sort of humbling because you realize, maybe sometimes you think, oh, I'm kind of cool. Yeah, maybe you're not. And so it kind of gives you this, this sort of urge to do more, and at the same time, maybe you'll lose a little bit of your steam. And so it's been kind of a struggle this past few weeks since that happened. Since then, I've gotten a couple job offers. One of them is firm, and one of them is still kind of shaky, but nice to have an offer. And they're things that I kind of had thought maybe that I was done with. Kind of like once you go to novels, maybe you don't go back to some other stuff. But lately, with this stuff hanging in limbo, and then this stuff with the short story and the Extra Life thing, I've been like, maybe I need to take whatever comes along, and that's what my wife told me. So she's smarter than I am, so I have a tendency to listen to her. And so I will be, hopefully, if both of these pan out, things will, I'll be doing more and honing my craft more, and I've got a couple other irons in the fire, so I'm going to keep things going. But it's been a bit of a bumpy road over the last couple of weeks. And so it's been a while since I've shared with you any sort of writing stuff, so I thought maybe since that's what's happening at the moment that I would sort of throw that towards you. Not soliciting any sort of feedback or anything, not whining. Well, maybe there's a little whine, but, just that's what's going on. And so I guess at a point like this where you can either take it one way or the other, and either kind of knock you down a peg, or it can get you, up and running. And I'm hoping that it gets me up and running. So that's my plan. I'm going to get up. I'm going to run. And that's about all I've got to say about that. So thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Born on a mountaintop in Tennessee, green estate in the land of the free. Raised in the woods so's he knew every tree. Killed him a bar when he was only 3. Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. Fought single-handed through the Injun War till the Creeks was whipped and the peace was in store. While he was handling this risky chore, made himself a legend forevermore. Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. He give his word and he give his hand that his Injun friends could keep their land. The rest of his life he took the stand that justice was due every redskin band. Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. He went off to Congress and served a spell, fixing up the government and laws as well. Took over Washington, so we hear tell, and patched up the crack in the Liberty Bell. Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. When he come home, his politicking done, the Western March had just begun. So he packed his gear and his trusty gun and lit out grinning to follow the sun. Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. His land is biggest and his land is best, from grassy plains to the mountain crest. He's ahead of us all, meeting the test, following his legend into the west. Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. King of the wild frontier.